Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Dean Pressfield stood frozen outside his own bedroom, the sound of muffled voices piercing through the door. His heart thundered as he inched closer, every step confirming the betrayal he dreaded. Peering through the crack, he saw them, Audrey and Bryce, tangled together in the sheets that once symbolized their marriage. The CFO's smug grin mirrored the sheer arrogance of their affair. Bryce turned, his eyes locking onto Dean's frozen figure. "Oh, crap, Dean!" Panic erupted. But Dean didn't shout. He didn't cry, he simply whispered, "You've made your bed." The storm brewing behind his calm was more dangerous than they could imagine. Dean Pressfield rarely lost his temper. In the automotive world, he was known as a patient genius, the kind of CEO who asked the quiet questions that unlocked breakthroughs. A handful of patents bore his name, each one a testament to his knack for merging bold engineering concepts with real-world pragmatism. Yet tonight, he couldn't focus on a single thought without feeling the pulse pounding behind his ears. He stood in the hallway of his own home, a contemporary suburban expanse of polished wooden floors and soft amber lights. The living room behind him was bathed in the faint glow of a floor lamp he'd forgotten to turn off. From the kitchen, the gentle hum of the fridge reminded him that hours ago he'd planned a nice dinner with his wife Audrey, except Audrey hadn't shown up on time, again. He tapped his phone, checking the time. Almost 9 p.m. and she wasn't answering calls or texts. A variety of explanations ran through his mind, possibly a late client meeting or a charity fundraiser running overtime. Audrey often handled PR for Roadforce Innovations, the company he'd founded from scratch, so it wasn't completely out of left field for her to be busy. Yet something about tonight felt off. The vibe in the house felt chilly. His phone buzzed a message from Harold, his old friend and the chairman of Roadforce's board. "Heard you might be traveling next week. Mind dropping by the office tomorrow for a quick chat?" Harold's text read casual, but Dean sensed an undercurrent of concern. He typed a quick reply. "Sure. Let's meet at noon." Then he padded into the living room. On the glass coffee table next to an abandoned mug of cold tea lay an invoice for a luxury penthouse suite dated 2 nights ago. He gently lifted the paper. The total was eye-popping, even by corporate standards. Audrey had scribbled investor dinner in the margin. Dean frowned, puzzling over the details. Why had she needed a suite that cost as much as a month's rent in Manhattan? He sank into the couch, mind drifting. Usually he trusted her about expense reports. She was the PR lead, after all. Hosting potential investors or big clients at swanky spots wasn't unheard of. But that invoice, combined with Audrey's absences, made his gut twist. He tried to recall the last time they'd shared a relaxed dinner, the last time he'd seen her truly laugh at home. Everything seemed overshadowed by her new circles of acquaintances and the presence of Bryce Harrison, Roadforce's recently hired CFO. Dean rubbed his temples, remembering how Bryce came in like a whirlwind, a financial genius who supposedly saved companies from plateauing. He was introduced through a mutual contact. On paper, hiring Bryce was a no-brainer, big credentials, impeccable references. And indeed, the first few months, Bryce delivered results, slashed overhead, streamlined processes, courted big-time investors. Yet Nora, Dean's loyal executive assistant, had begun quietly hinting that certain budget lines didn't add up. Dean had brushed off her concerns, not wanting to micromanage. Perhaps that was a mistake. Finally, around 10 p.m., headlights swept across the living room window. Audrey's car pulled up, and he could see her silhouette through the tinted glass. When she walked in, she wore a form-fitting black dress, hair slightly disheveled, with the faintest trace of an unfamiliar perfume. A tang of something musky and sweet filled the entryway. "Hey," she said, dropping her purse on the nearest chair. Her voice sounded breathless, or maybe annoyed. "I thought you'd be asleep." "Couldn't sleep," Dean said simply. He lifted the invoice from the coffee table. "Found this." Audrey's eyes flickered. "Oh, that's for the investor meet and greet we had Tuesday night. I told you I'd be hosting them, remember?" "Not exactly," Dean said quietly. "You said you had a few out-of-town visitors. Nothing about a penthouse or that 5-figure tab. That's a little steep for a single dinner meeting, don't you think? She sighed, pressing her palm to her forehead. You're reading too much into this. Sometimes, with big fish, you have to splash out. I was with Bryce. She caught her breath, then exhaled. We both decided it was the best approach. The mention of Bryce sent a prickle of annoyance up Dean's spine. He tried to rein it in. So you and Bryce were there with investors? All night? Of course, Dean. Why do you sound suspicious? He set the invoice down. I just want to know if everything's okay. Lately, you're out a lot. You come home late, you're on your phone at odd hours, and I don't know. He paused, searching for the right words. We haven't felt like us. Audrey's chin lifted, eyes flicking over him as though analyzing his reaction. For a moment, he saw regret flit across her expression. Then she shrugged. We're both busy, that's all. This is how it goes when the company's expanding. You can't complain about me traveling or working nights when you do the same. Road Force is huge now, thanks to you. I have to keep up. Dean nodded slowly, biting back an urge to push harder. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was overreacting. But the tension in his chest wouldn't ease. Nora told me she's worried about Bryce's numbers. Have you noticed anything strange? Audrey's eyes narrowed slightly. Strange, how? Like certain budget lines, possibly inflated or moved around. She's not sure. With a tight laugh, Audrey waved a dismissive hand. Nora always hates new changes. She's old-fashioned, stuck in her ways. Bryce's methods might be new for her. Doesn't mean they're wrong. We can't cling to old processes just because we trust them. Dean studied her. You trust Bryce that much? Why wouldn't I? Audrey shot back. He's proven himself since day one. You hired him, remember? He took a step back, letting out a sharp breath. Fair enough. I guess I just want us on the same page. Things feel off lately. She forced a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm exhausted. Let's not do this tonight. Grabbing her purse, she pivoted and headed down the hallway, heels clicking in sharp staccato. Dean stared after her, an invisible chasm widening in the space between them. He looked at the invoice once more. The date and cost glared back at him, stark black on white. Something told him this wasn't a trivial PR expense. Something told him that an avalanche was building behind the scenes, and if he wasn't careful, it would bury him alive. He switched off the lamp, left the living room in darkness, and went to bed with a storm brewing in his mind. In the following days, Dean tried to keep an even keel at Road Force. He had an entire R&D team depending on him to refine the next generation of electric motors. Road Force had initially specialized in battery technology for commercial trucks and city buses, but under Dean's guidance, it pivoted to consumer vehicles as well. The potential was enormous. Each morning, he'd arrive at his office with a smile for the staff, trying to ignore the pang in his heart about Audrey's absence from their shared breakfast table. Nora knocked on his open door one morning. Dean, got a minute? Sure, come on in. He gestured for her to sit. Nora was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed with a tidy bun of chestnut hair that never seemed out of place. She'd been his assistant almost from the company's founding, someone he trusted more than most. She pressed her lips together before speaking. I don't want to overstep, but Bryce is going around telling people you're stressed out, maybe looking to scale back. Is that true? Dean leaned forward, elbows on the desk. No, absolutely not. Why would he say that? She shrugged, annoyance flashing in her eyes. He's been pulling aside mid-level managers, asking them how they'd feel if the boss took an extended leave. People are worried about layoffs, reorgs, the usual rumors that swirl. Honestly, they're all on edge. A spark of anger flickered in Dean's chest. Well, I'm not stepping down or taking a break. Road Force is my life's work. Nora exhaled, relief in her posture. Good. I told them you'd say as much. Another thing, I keep seeing these questionable transactions, big amounts going toward marketing outreach, but no clarifying documentation. And some weird lines for consultation fees. I tried to get details from Bryce's team, but I'm being stonewalled. They claimed it's hush-hush for major investor negotiations. Maybe I'm old school, but it all looks fishy. Dean rubbed his chin, mind whirling. Can you compile what you have? Put it in a discreet folder for me? Already done. I wanted you to know before it blows up. Thanks, Nora. He forced a tight smile. I appreciate you looking out for me. Let me handle Bryce. As she left, Dean's phone buzzed. A text from Audrey. Hey, can't make dinner at home tonight. Meeting with potential sponsors from out of state. Don't wait up. His heart sank as he read it. Sponsors, Bryce, late nights. Another puzzle piece fell into place, and the picture forming was grim. Late that same night, he sat in the living room again, phone in hand, swirling a small glass of whiskey he hadn't touched. He was no heavy drinker, but stress had him craving something to ease the tension. A call popped up from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but some instinct told him to pick up. Hello? Dean? A hesitant voice. It's Vanessa, Audrey's friend. He recognized the name. Audrey had known Vanessa from a prior PR job. They'd been fairly close, though he'd never seen them together much lately. Hi. Yeah. Vanessa? Is everything all right? A crackling exhale. No, I mean, yes, but I don't know. Look, I'm not sure I should even be calling, but I'm worried about Audrey. Dean felt the tension coil in his gut again. Worried how? She's just, I don't know, acting strange, missing appointments we planned, ignoring calls. She's always with Bryce, and let's just say that guy's not someone I trust. I guess I'm calling because maybe you can talk to her. I've tried, but she blows me off, says she's fine. Vanessa, can you be more specific? Are you implying something's going on between them? A pause. I'd rather not say, Dean. You're the husband. I figure it's best you handle it. I hate seeing her spiral. I'm sorry, I've got to go. The line clicked. Dean sat there, heart pounding, another friend noticing cracks in Audrey's story, another red flag. The whiskey in his glass shimmered under the dim lamp. He took a slow sip, letting the liquid burn down his throat. The taste was both numbing and clarifying. He refused to jump to conclusions, yet the avalanche of signs was too large to ignore. People kept hinting at Bryce's shady deals, Audrey's suspicious behaviors, everything pointing to an imminent meltdown. If he confronted her directly, would she deny it? Probably. But how else was he supposed to handle this? At midnight, he decided to check the company phone records. Audrey's line fell under the shared plan, so as CEO, he had the right to see the logs. A few taps brought up the call history. There it was. Multiple calls to Bryce's personal cell at odd hours, 11:30 p.m., 12:45 a.m., 1:05 a.m., over and over. The pattern was clear. He sat back, eyes closed, the phone lying cold in his hand. A wave of nausea hit him. Could she be confiding in Bryce? Maybe. But deep in his gut, he suspected more. She was lying about these late sponsor dinners. And if the phone logs were anything to go by, her nights involved a lot more than PR talk. He tried to quell the surge of anger. 100 scenarios raced through his mind, some benign, most not. He wanted to be rational, to trust her. But reason warred with dread. Slowly, he placed the phone on the table, exhaled, and pressed his palms into his eyes. If Audrey was truly betraying him with Bryce, that would be the ultimate blow. He'd poured his life, his soul, into road force and this marriage. He turned off the lamp, letting darkness wrap around him. Across the hush of the suburban street, a single car purred by, headlights flickering. He listened to the silence, feeling the house's emptiness bear down on him. By the time Audrey returned, he was half awake on the couch, hearing the door open at nearly 2 a.m. She saw him, froze, then gave a half-hearted attempt at a smile. "You didn't have to wait up," she murmured. Dean responded with a nod, not trusting his voice. He stared at her for a long moment, taking in the faint scent of cologne on her clothes, definitely not hers, definitely not a feminine perfume. Something deeper, muskier. He let that sink in, said nothing. Eventually, she turned and padded to the bedroom, leaving him in the quiet gloom, alone with the confirmation that the crumbling walls of his marriage might be beyond repair. Despite everything, Dean wanted to salvage some semblance of normalcy. A few days later, he decided to arrange a romantic dinner at home, cooking one of Audrey's favorite meals: seared salmon with a citrus glaze, fresh asparagus, roasted potatoes. He set the table with their best plates, lit a few candles. It felt slightly desperate, but he told himself a heartfelt dinner might bridge the gap. He texted Audrey around 5. "Let's have a quiet dinner together. Made your favorite." She didn't reply, but he hoped she'd appreciate the gesture. He hovered in the kitchen as the salmon finished cooking, checking the clock repeatedly. By 7 p.m., no sign of her. By 8 p.m., the food sat cold, congealing under the overhead lights. He sent another text, tried calling. No response. Finally, around 9 p.m., Audrey's SUV pulled into the driveway. The door swung open and she stepped in, wearing the same black dress from a prior investor event, face flushed. "What is all this?" she asked, seeing the untouched dinner, the flickering candles. Dean forced a smile. "Thought we could have some time together. Everything okay?" She pressed her lips thin, glancing away. "I had a last-minute meeting. You should have told me you were cooking." "I did. I texted you." Audrey checked her phone, gave a vague shrug. "I must have missed it. Sorry. I'm not really hungry." She spotted the salmon, now dry and discolored. "I appreciate the thought." Dean inhaled slowly. "Audrey, I can't keep guessing your schedule. It's like I don't even know you anymore. Where were you tonight?" Her eyes flickered with annoyance. "I told you, a meeting." "Yes, but with who?" "Potential sponsors." "Why are you grilling me?" The choice of words, "grilling me," pricked his anger. "Because you never bothered to call. You left me here." "It was last minute," she snapped. "Bryce arranged it. Stop making a scene. Not everything revolves around your dinner plans." Dean felt that surge again, a wave of frustration nearly making him raise his voice. He swallowed it. "All right, let's not argue. I just wanted a nice evening. We barely talk these days." Her shoulders sagged. "Dean, I'm exhausted. I have a headache." She gestured at the salmon. "Thanks for cooking, but I'm going to bed." He watched her retreat down the hall, feeling a sting that wasn't just heartbreak, but also a growing certainty that something sinister was at play. That night, Dean dozed fitfully, hearing Audrey rummage in the bathroom around midnight. Sometime after 2 a.m., he startled awake to find the bed empty. He padded softly to the living room, noticing the faint glow of Audrey's phone on the couch. She was hunched over it, sending messages. He cleared his throat, making his presence known. She jolted, tucking the phone away. "Can't sleep," she muttered. Dean took a seat across from her. "Everything okay?" "Just dealing with some issues at work." "What issues?" she bristled. "Can we not do this right now? I'm too tired for 20 questions. A quiet bitterness snaked through him. "Right." He paused, then said, "I worry about us, about you." She sighed, rubbing her temple. "Then don't. Let me handle my stuff." He gave a nod, rose, and left her to her phone. Just as he exited the room, he heard the soft chime of an incoming message. Something in Audrey's posture told him it wasn't just a harmless work text. In bed, he lay staring at the ceiling, replaying every clue. Bryce's suspicious financial maneuvers, Audrey's late nights, the invoice for the penthouse, her friend Vanessa's warning phone call, each piece slotted into a mosaic that spelled out an impending betrayal. A cold dread welled up in him. He wanted to believe Audrey was still the woman he fell in love with, the woman who once passionately championed his fledgling startup. But that vision felt like a memory from another era. Before drifting into a restless sleep, he decided one thing. He wouldn't blindly stand by. He was strong, competent, and not about to let his life's work and possibly his marriage be undone by shady maneuvering. If betrayal was truly happening, he'd find out. And if so, heaven help whoever thought they could bury Dean Pressfield. Dean didn't wake to an alarm. He woke to a sense of rising panic. He had a flight to Tokyo scheduled tomorrow to meet a key investor, but an emergency text from the investor canceled the meeting last minute, citing some unforeseen conflict on their end. So, instead of leaving as planned, Dean decided to keep it to himself and come home early surprise Audrey. Maybe whisk her away for a weekend somewhere quiet and sunny. He left the Road Force offices after lunch, ignoring Bryce's smug wave from down the hallway. Nora tried to catch up with him, but he only gave a quick explanation that he wouldn't be traveling after all. He wanted the rest of the day free. That gut feeling told him something big was lurking under the surface. By 3 p.m., he was driving through the winding suburban roads lined with neat lawns and trimmed hedges. Something about the sky, gray oppressive, mirrored the unease in his chest. Parking in the driveway, he noticed no second car. Strange, because Audrey usually had appointments or lunches, but she rarely used ride shares. Then again, he hadn't exactly told her he'd be home now. He stepped inside. The living room was dim, curtains half drawn, no sign of Audrey. He set his keys on the foyer table, calling out, "Audrey?" No response. Quietly, he made his way through the house. The hush felt suffocating. On a random impulse, he headed upstairs. The master bedroom door was partially ajar, and he heard voices low, breathy. A distinctly male voice mingled with a female one. His heart thundered, adrenaline spiking so hard he almost choked. He moved closer until he could see through the crack in the door. Audrey was on the bed, clothes half off, pressed intimately against Bryce. Dean's brain seemed to short-circuit at the sight. For a split second, he felt out of his own body, as if watching someone else's horrific drama. Then everything snapped back into searing clarity. The sheen of sweat on Bryce's back, the parted lips of Audrey, the tangle of sheets that belonged to him and his wife. His immediate reaction was to storm in, to rip Bryce away and scream. But a surreal calm overcame him, like ice flooding his veins. Instead, he stood there, letting the harsh reality imprint itself in his mind. This wasn't a fleeting suspicion, this was living proof of his wife's betrayal. Finally, Bryce glanced over and spotted Dean, eyes going wide with panic. Oh, crap, Dean. He rolled away, grabbing the sheet. Audrey let out a startled yelp, clutching the covers. "No, Dean, wait." Dean's chest rose and fell, fury simmering behind his eyes. "Don't bother." His voice came out cold even. "Just don't." Audrey scrambled to the edge of the bed, hair disheveled, reaching a trembling hand toward him. "Dean, please, let me explain, this was a stupid moment, it just—" He lifted one hand, stopping her words. You had the nerve to do this in our bed?" Her face crumpled, tears already forming. Bryce stood up gingerly, the sheet wrapped around his waist. "Listen, man, this doesn't have to get ugly. We can handle this like adults." Dean turned a withering stare on him. "I welcomed you into my company. You do realize that, right?" Bryce tried a smug little smile, then realized the pure rage emanating from Dean. "Look, it just happened. Audrey and I, well, it's complicated." Dean's fists curled, but he refused to let his temper spill over. He simply took a step back. "No, we're not doing this scene. I'm leaving." Audrey sobbed, stepping forward. "Dean, wait, let me talk to you. I swear it's not what it looks like." He laughed bitterly, the sound hollow in the hush of the hallway. "Not what it looks like? Looks exactly like you're screwing the CFO in my house. I'm done." He turned, walked down the stairs, ignoring her frantic footsteps behind him. She called after him, voice cracking, "It was a mistake. Please, please, don't just walk out." Bryce, now in a robe, hovered at the top of the stairs. "Dean, for the sake of road force, let's be rational, okay?" Dean paused at the front door, glare slicing through the tension. "You have no idea how rational I can be." Then he disappeared out the door, shutting it with a finality that left Audrey sobbing and Bryce wide-eyed. Dean drove aimlessly for nearly an hour, the shock and betrayal throbbing in his skull. He ended up at a modest roadside motel on the outskirts of the city. Parking under a flickering neon sign, he booked a room with a blank expression, carrying nothing but the jacket on his back and the phone in his hand. Inside the cramped room with a stale odor of old cigarettes, he sank onto the edge of the bed. The gravity of what he'd witnessed crashed over him. He forced himself to replay it, to be sure it wasn't some twisted hallucination. No, it was real. Audrey was naked with Bryce, the man he'd entrusted with finances at Road Force, the man behind half the suspicious moves lately. He clenched and unclenched his fists, a primal rage battling the heartbreak in his chest. Part of him wanted to storm back into that house, tear Bryce limb from limb, scream at Audrey until he lost his voice. But an equally powerful part of him recognized that losing control would only cost him more. Bryce would manipulate the situation, twist it. The tabloids, the press, the board who knew how that might spin out. He glanced at the gold wedding band on his left hand, a symbol of vows that apparently meant nothing to Audrey now. Slowly, deliberately, he tugged it off, setting it on the nightstand. The strip of paler skin beneath the ring felt like a brand, a ghost of better times. He grabbed his phone, ignoring a cascade of missed calls and texts from Audrey. The top unread message was from Bryce, of all people. He couldn't help reading it. Look, let's not blow this out of proportion. We can figure out a resolution that benefits everyone. Dean let out a derisive laugh that turned into a strangled sound of anger. Benefits everyone. The nerve. He typed out a quick reply. I won't kill you, but I'm not letting you win. Watch your back. Then, with a surge of decisiveness, he powered down the phone. He needed a plan, a strategy, something to keep him grounded. He was no fool. If Bryce was cunning enough to sleep with the CEO's wife, forging some twisted alliance, then it was likely he had more destructive moves in mind for Road Force. If Bryce and Audrey were a team, they could be conspiring to oust him from his own company, leaving him with nothing. Dean refused to let that happen. He pressed the heels of his hands into his eyes, trying to focus. The day's events hammered in his brain, but he forced a semblance of calm. It was time to think logically. The company, the finances, the board, the stocks, the expansions. Everything that might be under threat. The old lamp on the nightstand sputtered, bathing the dingy wallpaper in a sickly yellow glow. He wiped his face, realizing tears threatened at the edges of his eyes. He'd never felt so humiliated, so raw. But part of him clenched around a cold resolution. This wasn't the end. He wasn't going to crash and burn like a hapless chump in some soap opera. He would gather the facts, build a fortress of legal and financial strategies, and then face them head-on. A quiet vow formed in his chest. They want to bury me? I'll bury them first. 2 hours later, long after the sky turned black, his phone vibrated on the bedside table. He flinched at the sudden sound, then saw the screen. Nora. Office. He hesitated, but answered. Her voice was urgent. Dean, Bryce told the board you're stepping down due to mental health issues. Is that real? He felt a white-hot flash of fury. What? No, of course not. That bastard's lying. Yeah, I figured. He's claiming it's a temporary leave, and he's stepping in as acting CEO. He's also telling them you might need some personal time off, something about, quote, Dean's emotional crisis. Dean closed his eyes, breath shaky. He pictured Bryce smugly spinning the story to their older board members, painting Dean as the unhinged spouse. Nora, please don't let them finalize anything. I'll be back soon. Back from where? She asked anxiously. He paused. I'm dealing with a personal matter. Let's just say Bryce is out of line. Does Harold know about this? Yes, but apparently Bryce cornered him and put on this big show, saying you were spiraling. Harold tried to ask Audrey about it, and she confirmed you were having personal struggles. Dean's stomach clenched. Audrey was backing Bryce's story. All right, he said quietly. Tell Harold I'll be at the board meeting tomorrow. If Bryce tries to push for a vote or any official changes, stall him. Nora sounded relieved. Got it. Just be ready. Bryce is on a rampage. Something's definitely off with the numbers he's juggling, too. Thank you, Nora. I appreciate the heads-up. Hanging up, Dean stared at the phone. So Bryce wasted no time. The man must have planned this for weeks, or maybe even months. Replacing the CEO with a single board vote would be tricky, but if Audrey was supporting it as PR head, and if Bryce had enough board allies, they could orchestrate a surprise coup. His mind churned with 1,000 possibilities. He had to regroup, confront them in the boardroom, prove his stability, and protect his position. But now he had to do all that while seething with the knowledge that Audrey was physically betraying him with the CFO. It was the ultimate double punch. He sank onto the bed again, the motel's cheap mattress squeaking. The dull hum of a neon sign outside flickered through the window. He thought about driving to Audrey's place, their place storming inside, throwing Bryce out in a fit of rage. But that would just feed the narrative that he was unstable. No, he had to stay calm, outsmart them. He scrolled through his phone's contact list until he reached Harold's name. After a brief text exchange, Harold called back. The older man's gravelly voice came through the line. Dean, everything okay, son? Dean forced a laugh that sounded hollow. No, but it will be. I heard Bryce is telling folks I'm stepping down. Harold sighed. Yes, it's a damn mess. He claims you informed him of personal issues, depression maybe. I didn't buy it, but the rest of the board seemed concerned. I was blindsided. Dean stared at the water stain on the ceiling. He's lying. I'll attend tomorrow's meeting. Don't let them finalize anything. Son, Harold's tone softened. Is everything all right at home? Is Audrey involved somehow? She told me you needed rest, that you were overwhelmed. I found it odd. Don't mean to pry, but you know how gossip fuels corporate decisions. Dean hesitated, swallowing the ache in his throat. Let's just say things are complicated. I won't let that interfere with my position as CEO. Good. Then I'll see you tomorrow. Keep a cool head. When the call ended, Dean's phone beeped with another incoming text from Audrey. He tensed, reading, "Dean, please come home. I'm sorry. We can talk. I'll do anything to fix this." He stared at the words, torn between heartbreak and fury. Too little. Too late. He turned off the phone again, letting the darkness close in. Morning dawned bleak, the motel's pale curtains letting in a sickly band of light. Dean showered, changed into a spare shirt he'd kept in his car trunk from a prior trip. He'd look presentable enough. He grabbed a quick coffee from a gas station on the way to Road Force headquarters, his mind steeled for a fight. The building soared 15 stories, the Road Force logo shining on reflective glass. The sensation of entering the lobby felt different today, like walking into an arena where half the spectators might be cheering for his downfall. He headed straight to the executive floor. Despite the adrenaline spiking through him, he forced a composed demeanor. Staff gave him wary looks, as if they'd heard the rumors of his meltdown. The stares hardened his resolve. Outside the boardroom doors, Harold waited, worry etched into his lined face. They're in there, ready to convene. He lowered his voice. Bryce wants a formal vote on your removal. Dean nodded. I expected as much. He gripped the handle, exhaled, and strode in. Around the long mahogany table sat the board members, a mix of older men, 2 women, all in neat suits. At the head, Bryce stood, talking in that smooth, confident tone. Audrey was seated next to him, scanning some documents. Her gaze flicked up the second Dean entered, eyes wide with guilt. Bryce paused, a faint smirk crossing his face. Ah, Dean. Surprised to see you here. I thought you'd be resting. Dean forced a curt smile. I'm surprised you're standing at my table. He moved to the head seat, overshadowing Bryce's position. The CFO didn't budge at first, but the tension in the air was palpable. Finally, Bryce shifted one seat over, a reluctant gesture. One of the board members, an older woman named Patricia, cleared her throat. Dean, is everything okay? We've been told you might be taking a leave of absence. Bryce said. Dean held up a hand. No, I'm not stepping down or taking a leave. I'm perfectly capable of running Road Force. I have no idea what Bryce told you, but he's mistaken. A murmur rippled around the table. Bryce maintained a bland expression, but a flicker of annoyance glinted in his eyes. Look, we're just worried about your mental well-being. Audrey voiced concerns about your stress levels. Dean's eyes cut to Audrey, who lowered her gaze. I appreciate the concern, Dean said, carefully controlling his voice. But my mental state is fine. We should be discussing the actual performance of Road Force. Harold, you want to give an update? Harold nodded, launching into the quarter's numbers, expansions, and new deals. Bryce tried a couple of times to steer the conversation back to Dean's personal crisis, but each time Dean calmly refuted it. The meeting lasted nearly 2 hours, culminating in a push from Bryce for an executive session to discuss personnel matters. That spelled trouble. They broke for a short recess. Dean lingered, ignoring Audrey's attempts to catch his eye. He stepped away, phone in hand, scanning an email from Nora. She'd compiled a folder of suspicious transactions tied to Bryce's department. He quickly memorized a few details, heart pounding. Bryce was up to something bigger than personal revenge. He might be siphoning funds or forging sign-offs who knew how deep it went. When the board reconvened, Bryce tried to motion for a vote of no confidence in Dean. Patricia hesitated, looking at Harold. The atmosphere crackled with tension. Before anyone could speak, Dean calmly rose. I have reason to believe Bryce has manipulated finances and misrepresented our budget. I'd like to review these findings with the board. He placed Nora's file on the table. A hush settled. He scanned the pages, pointing out discrepancies. These are expenditures listed under consultation fees that have no clear vendor or invoice trail, substantial amounts. A few board members looked shocked. Patricia frowned deeply, flipping through the pages. This looks questionable, to say the least. Bryce's composure wavered. This is out of context. Those are strategic marketing expansions, confidential details. Audrey can vouch for that. All eyes turned to Audrey. She swallowed hard, eyes darting from Bryce to Dean. Bryce told me it was for sponsor outreach. I didn't see any itemized breakdowns. Dean pressed on, voice unwavering. I suspect these are shell company transfers. We need a thorough audit. Until that's resolved, any discussion of removing me from my position is premature. Harold's voice cut through the hush. I agree. Let's table the vote. We'll schedule an internal audit immediately. Meeting adjourned. Bryce clenched his jaw, wanting to protest, but the board was already gathering their papers, unsettled by these revelations. Audrey looked pale, as though everything was spinning out of control. Dean let out a slow breath as the members filtered out. The showdown ended in a temporary truce, but not without planting seeds of doubt about Bryce's financial dealings. For now, Dean had kept the CEO role. The war was far from over, but this small victory mattered. When the board dispersed, Audrey hung back. Dean moved to leave, but she stepped in front of him, eyes brimming with desperation. Dean, can we talk? He folded his arms. I have nothing to say, aside from you lying about me being unstable. She glanced around, then said in a hushed tone, Bryce convinced me it was best for the company if the board thought you needed a break. He said we could handle things seamlessly while you recuperated. I didn't realize he'd use it to push you out. Dean's jaw tightened. Seriously? You didn't realize he'd do exactly that? She flinched. I'm sorry. Everything's been so confusing. You were gone more often. We were fighting. Bryce told me he had a plan to protect our image if you stepped aside. He laughed, a bitter edge coloring the sound. Protect our image? You're screwing my CFO behind my back, and you think you're protecting me? Dean, it's not like that Her voice shook. Look, I'm sorry for everything. Bryce and it was a mistake. I can end it. I want to make things right. He stared at her, anger simmering. A mistake is forgetting to pay a bill on time, sleeping with someone else, betraying me in my own house. That's not a mistake. That's a choice you made over and over. Tears pooled in her eyes. She reached a trembling hand toward him. Please, I'm begging you. I still love you. He stepped back out of her reach. Don't say that. You destroyed any chance of love when you let Bryce into our bed. Now you're lying to the board, helping him sabotage me, and only apologizing because your plan failed. There's no going back, Audrey. She looked shattered, tears streaking her makeup, but Dean felt no pity at that moment. He brushed past her, heading down the hallway. He could feel her gaze burning into his back, but he kept walking, each step fueled by the sense that her betrayal was deeper than he first realized. He left the building and slid into his car, breathing heavily. The heartbreak was still there, a constant ache, but overshadowed by determination. He'd discovered enough to suspect Bryce was orchestrating not just a marital betrayal, but also a financial coup, and Audrey was complicit, at least partly. The question that gnawed at him, did she sabotage me intentionally? Or was she manipulated by Bryce's sweet talk? Either way, the result was the same. Dean pressed the ignition, the engine roaring to life. He was still CEO, still had a foothold, but they'd stripped his illusions of a stable marriage, of a loyal wife. All that was left was the fight. If Bryce wanted a war, Dean would bring him an apocalypse. Early the next day, Dean was summoned back to Road Force for an emergency board meeting. Something about major developments. He arrived to find the tension in the air thick as sludge. People whispered in corners, side-eyed glances following him down the corridor. In the boardroom, Bryce stood at the far end, suit crisp, face composed. Audrey was seated nearby, posture stiff. Nora tried to give Dean a heads-up, but she was ushered out as soon as the meeting began. Almost immediately, Bryce launched into a dramatic presentation. Bullet points on a projector, slides referencing Dean's mental instability, erratic management, and lack of strategic foresight. Audrey chimed in, citing concerns for Dean's personal well-being. Harold was the only one who looked appalled, while a few other board members seemed hesitant. Then Bryce dropped a bombshell, forged documents that proved Dean had signed away certain controls. Dean's gut twisted. He recognized his own signature, but the date and context were all wrong. Bryce claimed it was from a shareholders agreement, effectively transferring control to an entity that surprise Bryce managed. Dean tried to interject, slamming his hand on the table. "This is nonsense. I never signed those. This is forgery." Bryce feigned shock. "Dean, it's your signature. And Audrey witnessed it, didn't you, Audrey?" Her voice trembled as she nodded. Yes, I saw him sign something that day." Harold stood, outraged. "You can't just remove the founder based on questionable documents. Let's be rational, we need a forensic check." But Bryce pressed for a vote, claiming urgency to protect Road Force from further chaos. With Audrey's support, the majority of the board, likely swayed by Bryce's manipulative finances, raised their hands in favor of temporarily removing Dean from the CEO position. Harold voted no, voice shaking in anger, but he was outnumbered. Just like that, it was official. Dean was out. The heartbreak in his chest flared into white-hot fury. He ground his teeth, resisting the urge to flip the table. "You're making a huge mistake," he bit out. Bryce extended a smug handshake. "We appreciate your past contributions, Dean. You'll still be recognized as the founder. Take some time off. Maybe come back in an advisory capacity once you're better." Dean's fists curled, but he forced a calm demeanor. The board was the battlefield, and he'd just lost this round. "This isn't over," he said quietly. He glared at Audrey, who looked away. Then he turned on his heel and left the room. Outside, Nora rushed up, tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, I tried to speak up. Bryce threatened me with termination if I kept prying into the finances." Dean shook his head, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "It's okay, Nora. It's part of his plan. We'll get through this," she whispered. "He's freezing your access to accounts you might not get your paycheck or bonuses. He's forcing you out, financially." Dean inhaled deeply. "Then I'll walk away with nothing for now, but not for long." As he left the building, he noticed security personnel discreetly watching him, as though expecting him to cause a scene. He refused to give them that satisfaction. Instead, he silently walked out to find his company car was no longer in the executive parking spot. They'd even taken that away, humiliating him in every possible detail. He pulled out his phone to call a ride. Inside, a swirling maelstrom of rage, sorrow, and determination tore at him. Bryce's orchestrated coup, Audrey's betrayal, and the board's spineless acquiescence all crashed on him at once. Fine. Let them think they won. He'd let them celebrate their victory momentarily while he planned his real next move. Within hours, Dean discovered his bank accounts were inaccessible, Road Force had direct deposit control, and evidently Bryce had engineered a freeze with the bank's compliance department. Credit card lines, also heavily tied to his corporate status, were cut off. He was left with some personal savings in a separate account, but it wasn't enough to sustain him long-term. The worst part was the executive penthouse owned by the company that he'd sometimes used for city stays. He was locked out of that too. He met Harold at a modest diner downtown, wearing the same clothes from the previous day. Harold's face was etched with concern. "Son, I never imagined they'd do this so quickly. Bryce must have bribed or threatened half the board. Audrey's backing him, which is giving them PR cover." Dean sipped black coffee, feeling its bitterness match his mood. "I appreciate you standing up for me, Harold. But they want me gone. They've got the documents to prove my resignation. Even though it's forged, I need a plan to fight back." Harold leaned in. "Legally, you can challenge them, but you'd need lawyers, investigators, money. Bryce has the advantage right now. He's controlling your corporate holdings, your shares, everything." Dean set the mug down with a dull thud. "I can't stand by while they tear apart the company I built. We have new patents in the pipeline, R&D breakthroughs. Bryce will kill them for short-term gains." Harold nodded sadly. "I tried to speak sense to the board. They're blinded by Bryce's confidence. That man is a salesman promising huge returns. Meanwhile, Audrey's painting you as unstable. People believe what they want to believe." Dean's throat tightened at the mention of Audrey. "She took everything. My trust, my love, and apparently my company. She sold me out for that slick CFO." Harold placed a reassuring hand over Dean's. "Don't let them crush you, son. You're the real genius here. Bryce is a parasite. If you need some time away, I have a cabin upstate. You can lay low, gather resources, but I warn you, a legal fight might take years. Dean exhaled, a slow wave of determination rising within him. Thank you, Harold. A legal fight is only one approach. I might have something else up my sleeve. Oh. Harold's brow creased. Dean's eyes glinted. I have a knack for invention. I still own the rights to certain designs in my name. Bryce doesn't know about some pending patents I filed personally. I might be able to build something new, something bigger, and come back stronger. Harold squeezed his arm. That's the Dean I know. Don't lose that spark. Meanwhile, I'll keep an ear to the ground at Road Force. I'm still chairman for now, anyway. Thank you, Dean said softly. We'll get even. The diner's hum provided a strange sense of normalcy as they parted ways. Dean glanced at the cheap motel key in his pocket, deciding to pack up. He'd find a quiet place to gather his wits. That evening, in a swirl of heartbreak and steely resolve, he loaded a suitcase into the trunk of his battered old personal car, the only vehicle not under corporate lease. Then he drove away from the city, ignoring every frantic text from Audrey that now peppered his phone. That night, he ended up at a rundown roadside bar with flickering fluorescent lights. The bartender, a gray-haired woman with a motherly face, served him a whiskey neat. He sipped it slowly, scanning the near-empty room. Just a few truckers, maybe a traveling salesman, and an aging jukebox crooning old rock ballads. Dean's phone chimed. A text from Audrey again. He stared at the notification, reading the preview. Please talk to me. We can fix this. He scoffed. Fix what? The corporate betrayal or the affair with Bryce? He scrolled up, seeing her previous messages. I swear it wasn't planned. Bryce said you were cold and pushing me away. I felt alone. Please don't vanish. We have a family. The kids need both of us. Just come home. Let's figure it out. He set the phone face down, refusing to indulge that thread of lies. Instead, he opened an encrypted email from Nora. She'd attached yet another set of suspicious transactions under Bryce's leadership. Large sums routed through a labyrinth of shell companies. The scale was bigger than Dean expected, implying possible illegal money laundering. If that was true, then Bryce was more dangerous than ever, and Audrey was, at best, entangled in a ticking time bomb. Dean typed a quick reply, telling Nora to keep the files coming, keep them off the official Road Force servers, and keep her head down. He sipped his drink, letting the whiskey burn. This was no longer just about infidelity or petty power plays. Bryce might be committing crimes, jeopardizing the entire future of Road Force. Dean's revenge would need to be methodical, unstoppable. He couldn't just show up with a lawyer and hope for the best. He needed a bigger, quieter plan, an alternate empire that overshadowed Road Force, so that when he struck, Bryce and Audrey would be left in the dust. His phone beeped again, another text from Audrey. He slid it aside, ignoring the heartbreak that threatened to well up. Instead, he pulled out a battered notebook from his jacket pocket, flipping to a blank page. His mind spun with engineering concepts he'd toyed with over the years, advanced battery chemistries, more efficient drive motors, even experimental AI for vehicle management. If he refined these ideas under a new entity, something not traceable to his name yet, he could pitch them to outside investors. He'd do it quietly, building capital. Then, when the time was right, he'd stomp Bryce and rescue what was left of Road Force from the parasite's jaws. He wrote late into the night, the bar's neon sign buzzing overhead. Page after page of sketches, calculations, bullet points of potential contacts. A quiet sense of purpose buoyed him, even as the ache of betrayal smoldered beneath. The best revenge wouldn't be a screaming showdown, it would be overshadowing Bryce, surpassing Road Force, forcing them to grovel for mercy. And Audrey, who once held his heart, would face the full measure of regret. The next day, driven by a spark of curiosity, Dean decided to swing by his house, the place that until recently was his home with Audrey and their kids. He wanted to see if Audrey was living there alone or if Bryce had moved in. He doubted Bryce would be so brazen, but who knew? He parked a short distance away, walked up the quiet suburban street. A few neighbors recognized him, gave awkward waves. Word must have spread about the corporate drama. Rumors always traveled fast in well-to-do neighborhoods. He stood at the front door, seeing that Audrey's car was absent. A pang of memory washed over him the time she'd greeted him at this very threshold with a warm kiss. Now it felt like a stranger's house. He tried his key, found the locks changed. Another blow. A neighbor, Mrs. Gilmore, poked her head over the hedge. "Dean, everything all right? Haven't seen you in days." He mustered a smile. "Hey, Mrs. Gilmore. Yeah, just dealing with some work stuff. You seen Audrey around?" "She's out a lot. Heard she's been traveling. Your children, well, I noticed Audrey's sister dropping them off at school lately. So Audrey had the kids carted away by her sister." "Great." Dean nodded politely. "Thanks for letting me know." Inside, he felt a swirl of anger. Audrey had changed the locks. Did she think he'd barge in with a baseball bat? He walked back to his car, the autumn wind rustling the golden leaves overhead. In one final text to Audrey that day, he wrote, "Change the locks? You're cutting me off from my own house? Keep it. But remember, you started this war." He doubted she'd find comfort in that message, but he wanted her to know he saw everything. The illusions were shattered, and the path to a merciless revenge had begun. Exhausted, Dean drove out of the suburbs toward a quiet town beyond the city. There, he rented a small storage space and purchased some second-hand workshop equipment. It was a start, a place to bring his ideas to life without prying eyes. As the sun dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of pink and orange, Dean stood in the echoing emptiness of that storage unit, newly acquired. He stacked the tools carefully, surveying the possibility that this unassuming spot could be the birthplace of something revolutionary. Something that would one day eclipse road force entirely. He clenched his fists, recalling Audrey's tearful face, Bryce's arrogant smirk, the board's stunned expressions. They'd taken his title, his money, even the sanctity of his marriage. But they hadn't taken his genius, the one thing that truly mattered. He lifted a pad of paper, scrawling potential names for a shell corporation that could house his new developments. The pen hovered, then scratched out a few possibilities. Zentech Solutions had a crisp ring to it. He circled it, a determined glint in his eye. Zentech Solutions coming soon to outshine Roadforce. For a moment, he imagined the final showdown, Bryce cornered in a boardroom, forced to watch Dean's unstoppable rise. Audrey, realizing the man she betrayed, soared to heights she could only dream of. The thought kindled a small, wry smile on Dean's lips. "This is just the beginning," he murmured. "I'm down, but not out." Days turned into weeks as Dean holed up in that rented workshop, quietly building the foundation of what would become Zentech Solutions. Every morning, he'd wake in a modest Bedan breakfast out of town, drive to the storage unit, and tinker with prototype battery modules. He kept to himself, using a friend's name to secure the lease so Bryce and Audrey couldn't track him. During this time, he assembled a small circle of new allies, folks who either disliked Bryce's style or believed in Dean's visionary approach. The first was Vanessa, a brilliant software engineer he'd run into at a local cafe. She recognized him from a tech conference ages ago and bluntly asked, "Why does the press say you're no longer with Roadforce?" He gave a guarded explanation, but she sensed more. Soon enough, she was helping him fine-tune code for his experimental battery management systems. It turned out she was also fleeing a toxic workplace, so she jumped at the chance to join a stealth startup if Dean promised her a stake. Together, they worked 12-hour days in that dingy space. She coded advanced AI-driven monitoring for battery usage, while Dean hammered out new housing materials to reduce weight and increase efficiency. The synergy felt electric, fueling his battered soul with a glimmer of hope. Each morning, Dean's routine was the same. Wake at dawn, do a quick set of push-ups, glance at any updates from Nora, then head to the workshop with coffee in hand. The coffee shop owner, a friendly older guy named Frank, quickly learned Dean's order: black coffee, no sugar. The man once asked, "You writing a novel in that workshop? You're there all the time." Dean just smiled, something like that, and left it at that. He kept the details close to the vest. No sense in letting word get out before he was ready. Occasionally, he'd check local news or corporate press releases to see how Roadforce was faring under Bryce's leadership. The headlines were a mixed bag. Roadforce CEO promises, bold new expansions, stock slips amid R&D uncertainties. PR head, Audrey Pressfield teases upcoming partnerships. He'd swallow his bitterness at seeing Audrey's name attached to big announcements. He no longer recognized the woman behind that glamorous PR face. All he could think was how she'd helped Bryce push him out. During one of those coffee stops, Dean got a call from Harold, who whispered that Bryce was hemorrhaging funds, hosting lavish investor events, ignoring actual product development. "Roadforce is losing ground to competitors," Harold said gravely. "They might be heading for major debt." Dean allowed himself a flicker of grim satisfaction. Step by step, Bryce was undermining the empire he stole. One morning, the sound of an engine outside the workshop made him glance up from his desk. Vanessa hopped off a small motorcycle, removing her helmet to reveal short-cropped, flamered hair. She gave him a broad grin. "Brought coffee and bagels. Also, a new line of code for the battery simulation you might want to see." She set down her laptop, quickly booting it up. "I hammered away at it last night. We can probably get 15% more range if we optimize the discharge curve. Let me show you." Dean nodded, feeling his tension ease slightly. He appreciated Vanessa's enthusiasm. It reminded him of when Audrey used to champion his earliest prototypes. Funny how life gave you new allies where old ones failed. Over the next hour, they exchanged technical jargon, refining the code. The workshop smelled of sawdust, machine oil, and fresh bagels. The synergy was palpable. Between them, they pinned up sketches on a corkboard, charted out potential business angles. Eventually, Vanessa wiped a smudge of grease from her cheek. "So, what exactly happened at Roadforce? The rumor mill says Bryce staged a coup. Then there's talk about your wife." Dean's jaw tensed. He fiddled with a blueprint before answering. "Long story short, Bryce took advantage. Audrey helped him. They forced me out. Let's just say they had a personal arrangement." Vanessa nodded slowly. "I can guess what that means." "I'm sorry." She paused. "Well, from what I see, you're the brains behind that operation. If we can build these prototypes, we'll outclass them easily." "That's the plan," Dean said quietly. "And I intend to do more than outclass them. I want to overshadow them so completely Roadforce collapses under Bryce's mismanagement." Vanessa studied him with a mixture of admiration and empathy. "He must have really burned you." Dean gave a short, humorless laugh. "He did more than that. He lit a fuse on my entire life. Now I'm going to watch him go up in flames." While working late one evening, Dean's phone pinged a message from Nora with an update. "Heard Audrey has the kids in some fancy private school. She's been missing pickups. Her sister or a nanny steps in a lot." Dean's chest constricted. He missed Evan, 14, and Lily, 10, fiercely. They were his pride, the reason he'd built Roadforce in the first place, wanting to create a legacy for them. Now it seemed Audrey was too busy with Bryce's business to even fetch them from school. The thought infuriated him. He wrote back, "Any chance you can find out their schedules or if I can visit?" Nora replied, "Might be risky. Audrey's told the kids you're traveling, but maybe we can arrange something discreet." He stared at the screen, emotions churning. He wanted to see his children, to assure them he was okay, that he hadn't abandoned them, but he also knew Audrey's involvement might complicate matters. The last thing he wanted was a screaming match at the school gates. He typed, "Let me know if they have any recitals or events. I'll slip in quietly." Days later, Nora sent details of Lily's upcoming Little League game. Dean decided to attend, incognito. He stood at the chain-link fence, baseball cap pulled low, sunglasses on, heart pounding when he saw Lily in her uniform. She laughed with teammates, looking a bit more grown than he remembered. He realized with a pang that he'd missed key moments in her daily life. Evan was there too, bored on the bleachers, fiddling with a phone. Dean kept his distance, not wanting a scene, just wanting to glimpse them. But after the game, Lily caught his figure in the corner of her eye. She froze, recognition dawning, and a huge smile broke across her face. "Dad?" He quickly pressed a finger to his lips. She ran over anyway, hugging him through the fence. He blinked back tears. "Hey, sweetheart, sorry I haven't been around." She looked confused, worried. "Mom said you're sick, traveling, something about you needing to recover." He forced a gentle smile. "I'm not sick, just had some business stuff. I missed you so much." Evan drifted over. "Dad? Why are you wearing sunglasses? Are you hiding from Bryce?" The bitterness in his teenage voice stung. Dean exhaled. I'm not around because your mom and Bryce basically took the company. I'm working on something new. I can't explain too much, but I love you guys. Evan's eyes flickered with resentment. We asked Mom about you. She just said not to worry, but we're not stupid. Before Dean could reply, a woman's voice called, Lily, Evan, let's go. It was Audrey's sister, motioning impatiently. Lily gave Dean another tight hug and whispered, Dad, come back soon. He watched them leave with a heavy heart. The kid seemed lost, uncertain. He clenched his jaw. Another reason to expedite his plan to unseat Bryce, he refused to let his children be raised under a swirl of lies. As the weeks rolled on, Nora kept feeding Dean morsels of insider intel. She discovered major accounts Road Force had lost because Bryce neglected R&D marketing budgets soared, inflating Bryce's personal image while draining resources. The board, apparently enthralled by Bryce's big talk, was slow to react. But cracks were forming. If he failed to deliver actual product improvements soon, they'd revolt. Harold wrote to Dean as well, lamenting that he was being squeezed out of daily decisions. I might step down as chairman soon. Can't stand the direction things are going, he said in one message. Dean urged him to hold on, to be a sentinel on the inside. Meanwhile, Audrey's PR machine posted glitzy photos online of Road Force's new era. She always stood near Bryce, smiling tightly, though Dean noticed something forced in her expression. Maybe guilt nipped at her. Maybe she realized that turning her back on Dean came at a steep price. He tried not to dwell on it. Vanessa whooped one afternoon, startling Dean from his design notes. She thrust her laptop at him. Check out the simulation results. We just cracked 20% better range than the closest competitor, with a battery half the size. Dean scanned the data, a grin spreading across his face. This was huge, a quantum leap forward in electric motor efficiency. If they commercialized it, they'd revolutionize the market. Vanessa, you're brilliant, she laughed, cheeks flushing. I just wrote the code. You designed the hardware architecture. This is a game changer, Dean. He nodded, mind already racing. If Road Force's entire approach was overshadowed by these new designs, it could trigger a mass shift in investor interest. He carefully saved the data, backing it up to a secure cloud under the Shell Corporation's name. He refused to let Bryce get anywhere near these breakthroughs. That night, he wrote to an attorney friend, Miss Clark, asking about patent filings. He explained his predicament, leaving out the marriage fiasco but detailing the corporate betrayal. Miss Clark agreed to help register these new patents under an LLC not traceable to Dean's name. Step 1 to building a hidden empire. Despite the progress, Dean often felt the sting of loneliness. Once, after a long day, he sat on a crate in the workshop, face in his hands. The heartbreak from Audrey's affair still haunted him, overshadowed only by the anger at Bryce. Even building Zentech solutions from scratch couldn't fully numb that ache. Vanessa found him there, pressed a water bottle into his hand. You look like hell, she said gently. He gave a half-laugh. Feels like it. I can't stop thinking about how everything I had fell apart so fast. I keep wondering if I overlooked signs or if I worked too hard and neglected Audrey. Vanessa's eyes softened. Cheating isn't just about neglect. Some people, like Bryce, are professional manipulators. They worm their way in. Doesn't excuse Audrey's choices, but maybe it wasn't all your fault. Dean exhaled. I appreciate you saying that. I just need to channel this pain into something productive. He gestured around. This operation will be my redemption. She squeezed his shoulder. We're in this together. I believe in you, Dean. We'll bury Bryce with success. He nodded, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. He might have lost the partner he thought he'd grow old with, but new camaraderie was forming, and that gave him the strength to push forward. Late that evening, Dean walked outside, gazing up at the star-filled sky. The quiet hum of a distant highway reminded him how far he'd come from the big city office. The prototypes inside that workshop represented more than just new technology. They symbolized his resilience. He imagined the day he'd march back into a corporate arena, not as the disgraced CEO, but as the founder of a cutting-edge empire, a man with unstoppable patents, enough capital to buy and sell Road Force if he chose. Bryce and Audrey might think they'd won, but they had no idea the storm brewing on the horizon. With one last glance at the stars, Dean stepped back into the workshop. resolved to see this revenge through to its bitter, triumphant end. Dean Pressfield sat behind the wheel of a modest rental car, fingers drumming lightly on the steering wheel as he navigated back roads toward the outskirts of the city. Over the last few weeks, his base of operations had been the nondescript workshop he and Vanessa quietly outfitted an unmarked building in an area nobody would suspect housed the seeds of a technological empire. Each day, he drove there from a rented bedroom in a local bed-and-breakfast, avoiding the busier highways to keep his movements subtle. The car smelled like fresh coffee and machine oil. On the passenger seat lay a battered notebook filled with his scrawled designs, along with a brand-new folder from his lawyer friend, Miss Clark, containing the official confirmation Zentech Solutions was now incorporated, with the intellectual property for his advanced battery technology and motor designs legally vested in this new shell. Leaning forward, he spotted the low, corrugated roof structure that had become so familiar. To most onlookers, it was a vacant shipping depot. But inside, Vanessa had set up her coding station, carefully separated from the workshop's mechanical side. Beyond the small window, he glimpsed a figure standing with arms folded. Vanessa herself, waiting for him, her short red hair catching glints of morning sunlight. Dean parked, then let out a slow breath before stepping outside. His heartbeat flickered with that blend of anticipation and quiet anger he still carried. Anger at Audrey and Bryce for hijacking his company. Anger at the entire board for believing the nonsense. But each day, that fury fueled his drive to create something unstoppable. "Morning," Vanessa said, pushing a takeaway cup of coffee into his hand. "Thanks. Another long night?" he asked, noticing the dark circles under her eyes. She gave a rueful smirk. "Haven't slept more than 4 hours, but I finally solved that integration bug. The battery usage algorithm should be stable now." He blew on the coffee, taking a careful sip. "That's great. Exactly the kind of good news I need to hear." She led him inside. The interior looked more organized than it had in Chapter 4's final days. The metal shelves against the far wall were neatly labeled with parts, circuit boards, cables, and mechanical prototypes. Their main workstation was a large wooden table covered in laptops, 3D-printed components, and reams of code printouts. Vanessa set her helmet on a stool. "I also have an update on the potential connections we discussed. I reached out to a contact from my old startup. She's got ties to green tech investors, folks who might be open to licensing deals or a silent partnership if we want fresh capital." Dean's lips tightened. "Capital is definitely on my mind. The more money we bring in, the faster we can accelerate these prototypes." He remembered his first big deals at Roadforce and how exhilarating it had felt to see thousands of units rolling off a production line. Now, he was back at the starting gate, only this time. The stakes were far higher. "Let's plan a private demo once we've got a stable prototype," Dean said, placing his coffee aside and flipping open his battered notebook. "No big show, just a quiet reveal to carefully vetted prospects." Vanessa nodded. "I'm with you. By the way, any new intel from Nora? She mentioned how Bryce is doing?" Dean's gaze hardened. "She says Bryce is doubling down on marketing fluff. He's apparently talking about an all-new line of electric SUVs, but from what I gather, there's no real R&D to back it up." He paused, inhaling deeply. "That means if we strike soon, offering superior technology behind the scenes, we can sap investor interest from Roadforce in one swoop." Vanessa rubbed her hands together. "I like the sound of that. You want me to finalize the performance metrics by the end of the week?" "Absolutely. The moment we can present bulletproof specs, I'm booking private meetings. Then we keep a low profile until the contracts are locked." She fired him a confident grin. "Zentech Solutions is about to do some damage, huh?" A small smile curved his mouth. "That's the plan. We bury Bryce under the weight of real innovation." But as he set about organizing hardware to test that day, a faint pang twisted in his chest. In quiet moments, he still felt the ache of betrayal. He couldn't deny that part of him had believed Audrey might come to her senses, renounce Bryce, and rectify the fiasco. Yet each time those thoughts bubbled up, he crushed them down. She'd made her choice. He had to move on. Later that week, Dean found himself driving into the city under twilight skies, wearing an impeccable suit he'd purchased discreetly. Tonight's destination, a high society charity event focusing on environmental initiatives, something ironically close to Road Force's original mission. The reason for attending? He'd quietly become a major donor under an alias, funneling philanthropic money through a personal account Miss Clark helped set up. The plan was straightforward: appear briefly, gauge the network of wealthy individuals supportive of eco-friendly tech, and spark conversations that might lead to future partnerships for Zentech. With no official Dean Pressfield name on the list, he'd be introduced simply as a philanthropic investor known as D.P. Warren, an identity he'd chosen from a combination of old family names. He felt a quiver of nervous energy as he stepped out of a hired limousine, courtesy of a local chauffeur service. The building was a grand old mansion turned event venue, its facade lit up with tasteful green spotlights, banners proclaiming "Sustain Our Earth Gala." Attendees, dressed in sleek gowns and suits, mingled across the red carpet. Dean kept a low profile, letting the chauffeur open the door, then moved gracefully up the steps with a confident stride, shoulders squared. Inside, the gala brimmed with refined chatter, clinking glasses, a faint background of classical music from a live quartet. The atmosphere had that polished veneer of wealthy philanthropy people with money, wanting to see and be seen while also claiming to care about the environment. Dean scanned the crowd, searching for potential new contacts. Just then, a familiar voice sounded from across the foyer, sending a jolt down his spine. "Bryce, it's wonderful to see you again." Dean's fingers twitched. There they were, Audrey and Bryce, with a small entourage, presumably from Road Force. The pair stood near a sculpted fountain in the center of the lobby, Audrey looking radiant in a long emerald dress, Bryce in a tailored tux. They exuded confident smiles, entertaining a couple of middle-aged sponsors. Dean quickly turned, slipping behind a tall arrangement of potted plants, heart pounding. He hadn't expected them to attend the same event. Of course, it made sense environmental philanthropy had been part of Road Force's PR. Why hadn't he anticipated that? For a moment, a swirl of anger and vulnerability almost rattled him. "I can't let them see me," he thought. Not yet. Tonight he was incognito, forging new alliances. If Bryce recognized him, he'd attempt to humiliate him or worse expose him, cause a scene that might scare off potential investors. He took a breath, forced composure. Then he pulled the black and gold invitation from his pocket, verifying that he was indeed listed as D.P. Warren. "All right, let's do this." A side corridor led to a smaller lounge area where prospective donors could chat quietly. He made his way there, ignoring the main throng around Audrey and Bryce. Inside, a few well-dressed individuals sipped champagne, discussing ESG funds, solar initiatives, carbon offset programs. Perfect. A distinguished older gentleman introduced himself as Gregory Ellis, a venture capitalist who claimed to have a keen interest in the next wave of electric mobility. Dean gave a courteous nod. "Pleasure to meet you. I share that interest. My philanthropic group invests specifically in advanced battery solutions." Ellis's eyes lit up. "Oh, wonderful. I'm on the lookout for something truly disruptive. So many EV startups rehash the same battery chemistry." Dean suppressed a grin. "Disruptive? Let's just say I know of a new venture that's poised to redefine the market." They exchanged business cards, Ellis's official one, and Dean's minimal D.P. Warren card with a simple email and phone. Ellis seemed intrigued. "Perhaps we can arrange a private demonstration." Dean nodded. "Absolutely. I'll be in touch soon." As they talked, Dean noticed a swirl of motion in the hallway. Bryce and Audrey were entering the lounge. He stiffened. If they spotted him, the facade might unravel. He excused himself politely from Ellis, stepping near a waiter carrying champagne flutes. Shielded by the tray, he observed them. Bryce stood tall, making grand gestures. "We at Road Force are forging alliances with top-tier environmental funds," he declared to an eager couple. "You can expect a fresh product line soon, fully electric SUVs with unparalleled performance." Audrey chimed in, voice mellifluous. "We're bridging the gap between practicality and luxury, ensuring families can adopt green technology without compromise." Dean's stomach turned. He recognized the typical PR fluff. He'd once admired Audrey's ability to spin a story back when it served a mutual goal. Now it felt like a dagger. She was using that same charm to support Bryce's empty promises. Carefully, Dean angled his head so the collar of his suit jacket shielded part of his face. He inched along the perimeter of the lounge, stepping behind large, potted palms. The noise level was high enough that no one paid him extra attention, aside from a few curious glances. He overheard Bryce speaking about revolutionary motor designs that they expected to launch early next year. Dean nearly choked on silent laughter. Roadforce had no real R&D progress. They'd probably stolen or repackaged old concepts Dean left behind. He felt a prickle of satisfaction knowing that he and Vanessa were miles ahead with Zentech's breakthroughs. When Bryce paused to greet some newcomers, Audrey's gaze idly roamed the room. For a split second, Dean thought her eyes brushed over his silhouette. Time seemed to slow. She tilted her head, brow furrowing slightly as if trying to place him. His pulse thudded, but she must not have recognized him because she moved on. Exhaling in relief, he turned and slipped out of the lounge, heading for the back corridor leading to a garden area. In the garden, he found scattered groups of people around small standing tables or strolling by decorative lights. The evening air felt cooler, calmer. He breathed in, letting the tension ease from his shoulders. Yet the encounter with Audrey and Bryce reminded him why he was here, to quietly line up the next steps in his revenge. He texted Vanessa. "At the gala. Bryce Audrey here. They're bragging about new product line." "Ha." She replied almost instantly. "Figures. Let me guess, breakthrough performance?" "LOL. Don't get cornered." He typed back, "No worries. Already found a new VC contact. Might meet more if I'm lucky. We'll fill you in tomorrow." That evening, Dean took careful steps to remain unseen by Bryce or Audrey. He introduced himself to a half-dozen more potential investors under the Warren alias, dropping hints of a new venture. Some were polite but non-committal, others curious. One, a tall woman named Terry Alvarez, said she'd love to see numbers. As the gala wound down, he slipped out quietly. Outside, he noticed from the corner of his eye that Audrey stood near the fountain, scanning the crowd. Perhaps searching for him, or just bored. The flutter in his chest turned to steel resolve. She'll get no closure from me here, he thought. Not until I'm ready to let them see me on my own terms. In the back seat of the waiting car, he rubbed his temples. The glimpses of Audrey in that dazzling gown, standing next to the man who destroyed his livelihood, had cut deeper than he cared to admit. But the leads he'd gathered tonight might well accelerate Zentech's timeline, one more step toward overshadowing Roadforce. As the driver pulled away, a part of him pictured that final day of triumph when Bryce's illusions collapsed. In the reflection of the window, the city lights glowed, weaving a tapestry of shimmering ambition. Soon that tapestry would reflect his unstoppable comeback, and Audrey, from behind Bryce's sinking ship, would see it all. The next morning, halfway through a breakfast of burnt toast at the Bed and Breakfast's tiny dining nook, Dean's phone lit up with an urgent call from Nora. He answered, hearing the tension in her voice. "Dean, I'm done," she said before he could even say hello. "I'm handing in my resignation at Roadforce." His toast nearly slipped from his hand. What triggered it? She sighed heavily. "Bryce confronted me about digging into the finances. He basically threatened to fire me if I kept snooping and told me he'd blackball me from the industry. Meanwhile, Audrey's ignoring the signs of trouble, always covering for him. I can't stay there, Dean. It's a sinking ship." Dean considered the implications. Nora was an invaluable ally on the inside, but if Roadforce was indeed going under, maybe it was time she left. "I understand, but are you sure you want to lose that vantage point?" Her voice shook slightly. "I do. My mental health can't handle the toxic environment anymore. And I believe in you. I'd rather help you from the outside if you can use me." A warmth sparked in Dean's chest. "I'd love that. In fact, I was thinking of building a broader team once we secure more funding. We need a CFO or an operations lead for Zentech eventually. You'd be perfect for that if you're up for it." He heard a relieved laugh from her side. "That's exactly the kind of opportunity I hoped for. So yes, I'm definitely in. I can start as soon as I tie up any loose ends." Dean realized her resignation could be a catalyst. Bryce might escalate to hide whatever wrongdoing he was knee-deep in. "Be careful, Nora. Don't let them corner you or twist things. Just walk out with your dignity. If they threaten legal action, call Miss Clark." "Will do," Nora said firmly. "I'll keep you posted. Wish me luck." They ended the call, and Dean tapped the table with mounting excitement. Another puzzle piece was falling into place. Nora leaving Road Force starved Bryce of a key person who'd kept operations afloat. Without her, the cracks in the CFO's empire might deepen faster. He also felt a pang of concern for Audrey. Yes, she was the betrayer, but he knew how cunning Bryce could be. If finances were truly precarious, Audrey might be left scrambling. Yet he reminded himself, that's on her. She chose her side. Less than 48 hours after that call, Nora appeared at the workshop's entrance, wearing business slacks and a resigned expression. She held a cardboard box filled with her personal belongings from Road Force, a small potted plant, a few framed photos, and her desk nameplate. Vanessa greeted her with a warm smile. "Hey, it's so good to finally meet you in person." "Likewise." Nora exhaled. Had to slip out quietly before Bryce tried some last-ditch intimidation. But I did it. Dean hurried over, giving Nora a gentle hug. "Glad you're here. Sorry about the circumstances." Nora set down the box, glancing around at the makeshift lab tables, computer stations, and half-assembled prototypes. "This place is something else. Who knew you could stash an entire R&D facility in an old shipping depot?" Dean grinned. "We're resourceful. Let me show you around." He guided her through the sections. The station where Vanessa tested her software, the battery test rig near the rolling metal doors, and the corner with mechanical prototypes. Nora's eyes gleamed with interest as she realized how far along their tech was. "So this is the real deal," she murmured, skimming a data chart pinned to a corkboard. "These specs outstrip anything Road Force's marketing claims are possible." Vanessa shot a conspiratorial smile. "Exactly. And we're only warming up." Nora nodded, then her expression turned serious. "Bryce is sitting on a mountain of debt at Road Force. I've seen glimpses of the budgets he's signed off on pure madness. If he can't deliver a product soon, the board might revolt. But that's the catch. The board also believes in his hype. They're convinced Audrey's PR spin will save them." Dean's jaw tightened. Audrey's spin can't create a working product from thin air. Eventually, reality hits. Nora let out a thoughtful hum. "I have reams of data that might prove Bryce is funneling money to offshore accounts. Problem is, I never got the smoking gun, just patterns. He's become adept at layering shell companies." Vanessa pulled her laptop closer. "Send me what you have. I'm good at chasing digital footprints. If we can confirm illegal activity, it gives us a major advantage leverage if needed." Dean crossed his arms, leaning against the table. "I want to bury him fair and square on the business front. But if the law does it first, that's even better." He paused, glancing at Nora. "Speaking of which, have you heard anything from Audrey about all this? Or is she still in Bryce's shadow?" Nora pursed her lips. "She's fully on board with Bryce, or at least that's the face she's showing. Honestly, sometimes she looked conflicted when we passed in the hallway, but I can't read her mind." A pang of something regret or maybe sadness stirred in Dean, but he shook it off. She made her bed, let her lie in it. They spent the rest of the afternoon finalizing Nora's role in Zentech. Dean proposed she help manage the financial structuring, watch over the incoming capital once they secured it, and ensure the legal side was airtight. Nora dove in with gusto, eager to rebuild her career on honest ground. Vanessa took her aside, offering an encouraging pat on the shoulder. "We're so glad to have you. Dean's been run ragged wearing multiple hats. You'll be a lifesaver." Nora exhaled, relief evident in her eyes. "Feels good to be valued again. Thank you both." That night, they ordered takeout from a local Thai place, devouring noodles and curry in between lines of code and spreadsheets. It was a far cry from the plush conference rooms they'd once inhabited at Road Force, but the air crackled with a sense of purpose. They were building something real, something unstoppable. Outside, the moon rose high and bright, illuminating the quiet industrial lot. Dean stared at the glow from the open workshop door, imagining the day he'd step into the public eye again, not as a dethroned CEO, but as the architect of a new king in the electric vehicle space. He pictured Bryce's face contorting when the news broke that a revolutionary battery design had cornered the market. He pictured Audrey realizing she'd aligned herself with a sinking ship while Dean soared higher than ever. A slow burn of satisfaction lit within him. Soon, he muttered under his breath, sliding a final blueprint into the folder for Miss Clark. Soon, we show them what real innovation looks like. About 2 weeks later, Nora discovered an invitation in her personal email. A high society party at the Redwood Hotel, courtesy of the Road Force Eco Expansion Team. She passed it to Dean, eyebrows raised. Looks like Bryce is hosting a lavish party to woo new investors. Fancy cocktails, a big reveal, that kind of thing. Dean flicked through the digital invite on Nora's phone. He's either desperate for fresh capital or trying to secure major endorsements before the board panics. Redwood Hotel, that's a 5-star venue. He's blowing money like water. Vanessa, who was updating a set of code on the laptop, swiveled her chair. We could attend incognito like you did at the last gala. See who's there, gather intel. Dean pursed his lips. Tricky. Road Force events might be crawling with staff who'd recognize me. Not to mention Bryce and Audrey themselves. Nora looked thoughtful. I could go. I'm no longer at Road Force, but maybe I can pass as a prospective partner or something. They can't bar me from a public event if I come as a guest. Bryce might try to corner me with questions, though. Dean weighed the risks. We can't risk him flipping out and making you look like an intruder, but maybe we can slip you in with some legitimate reason, like you're representing a different interest now. Nora brightened. True. We can register me under Zentech's shell as a small-time eco-consulting firm. That way, it's not suspicious if I'm gathering info. Vanessa rubbed her chin. There's a chance Audrey will be on high alert. She knows you left Road Force, but maybe she won't cause a scene. She's big on appearances. Dean stared at the invite again, a swirl of possibility stirring in his mind. All right, let's do it. If you sense any risk, leave immediately. But the advantage is, we'll see who's backing Bryce, what nonsense he's pitching, and maybe we can identify more potential allies. They mapped out a plan. Nora would attend under the name of a newly minted consulting firm, registered by Miss Clark for exactly these covert infiltration scenarios. She'd observe, take discreet notes, maybe strike up casual conversations about Road Force's product pipeline. Then slip away. Before she left for the Redwood event, Dean gave her a small wire-like device and audio recorder about the size of a pinky finger. Just keep it in your purse or pocket. If Bryce starts boasting about hidden finances or timelines, we might catch him in his own words. Nora nodded, nerves dancing in her eyes. Got it. Let's see if we can speed up his downfall. Late that night, Dean stood outside the workshop with Vanessa and Nora, finalizing the infiltration details under the hazy glow of a single floodlight. The tension was tangible yet exhilarating. Every move they made was a step closer to unveiling Zentech's unstoppable design, and a step closer to exposing Bryce's farce. Dean gazed at the folder in his hand, stuffed with updated specs and patent confirmations from Miss Clark. We're almost there, he said quietly, more to himself than to them. A few more connections, a few more breaks, and we'll be unstoppable. Nora and Vanessa exchanged determined smiles. The wind rustled the trees beyond the lot, a faint whisper of momentum in the crisp air. Onward, Vanessa said, locking the workshop door. Let's see what awaits us at Redwood. Dean cast one last look at the flickering overhead light. His mind drifted momentarily to Audrey, wondering if she sensed the slow, methodical wave about to hit them. Probably not, he thought with a pang of grim satisfaction. She's too busy spinning illusions with Bryce. He climbed into his car, the engine purring to life, feeling the surge of quiet confidence. By the time the first cracks in Bryce's facade appeared, Dean intended to have Zentech fully funded and unstoppable. Their revenge would be meticulously complete. Nora stepped into the glittering lobby of the Redwood Hotel, heels clicking across polished marble floors, a subtle tension coiled in her stomach. She carried a sleek black clutch inside it, the tiny audio recorder from Dean, and a set of meticulously forged business cards identifying her as Nora Givens, senior consultant of an ecotech consultancy. All around, well-dressed men and women clustered in small groups, sipping cocktails under chandeliers. The Redwood was famous for its lavish events, and tonight's party was no exception. Tall floral arrangements adorned every table, the Road Force logo projected on a giant screen near the entrance to the ballroom. Nora wove through the crowd, scanning for any sign of Bryce or Audrey. She'd let Dean know the moment she saw them. She'd even pinned a small button camera on her dress collar, though it wasn't guaranteed to capture anything conclusive in a crowded environment. The plan was simple. Move about casually, chat up guests, pick up rumors, keep eyes open. The moment she felt cornered or recognized, she'd slip out. She accepted a flute of champagne from a passing waiter, took a cautious sip, then drifted toward the large double doors leading to the main ballroom. Soft music filtered out an upbeat jazz ensemble. A Road Force banner hung overhead, leading the charge into a green future. Stepping inside, she felt a wave of déjà vu from her Road Force days. The bright stage lights, the promotional displays of concept art for new vehicles, the PR staff flitting around with forced smiles. She spotted a few old colleagues who, upon noticing her, gave uncertain nods. She feigned confidence, nodding back. Then, across the expanse of the ballroom, near an elevated platform, she saw him, Bryce Harrison. He was in a tailored navy suit, hair combed back, radiating smug self-assurance. Next to him stood Audrey, wearing a deep blue evening dress, fielding a small group of onlookers with her polished PR smile. Nora's stomach twisted. Audrey's posture was poised, but Nora caught a flicker of tension around her eyes. Perhaps that was just wishful thinking. Maybe Audrey still had a conscience. But Nora hardened her resolve. She wasn't here to empathize with Audrey's regrets. She was here to gather intel. She surreptitiously turned on the audio recorder in her clutch, ensuring it was angled outward. Then she meandered near a table displaying pamphlets for Road Force's so-called Eco-Expansion Initiative. A man in his 40s stepped closer, flipping through a pamphlet. He wore a crisp black suit, with a watch that screamed, "Venture Capitalist." Nora seized the opportunity. "Looks interesting, right?" she said, adopting a casual tone. He glanced her way, nodding. "If it's real. I'm hearing big claims, but not seeing prototypes." Bingo. She extended her fake business card. "Nora Givens, Redwood Eco Consultancy. What's your read on all this?" He introduced himself as Terrence Wolcott, an investor. "Honestly, I was hoping to see actual functioning vehicles. Instead, all we have are fancy digital mock-ups. Bryce says a reveal is coming next quarter. I'm not so sure." Nora tucked that tidbit away. "Any idea how they plan to handle the battery supply chain?" Wolcott rolled his eyes. "No details. Just big talk about forging new battery alliances. That's half the reason I'm hesitant. Also, rumor has it Road Force is bleeding money on these marketing spectacles." He sipped his drink. "Between you and me, if they don't show something concrete soon, folks might jump ship. But maybe you know more?" Nora gave a non-committal shrug, not wanting to reveal her background. "I'm just observing. But I've heard that next quarter is going to be make or break for them." "Agreed," Wolcott said grimly. "Well, I'll give them a chance to impress me tonight. If all else fails, I'll keep an eye out for new players in the EV space." He moved on, leaving Nora with a small rush of triumph. New players in the EV space, she mused. Zentech Solutions, perhaps? If all went well, they'd scoop up investors like him once Road Force's hype collapsed. Soon the overhead lights dimmed, and a voice from the loudspeakers announced Bryce Harrison for a keynote address. The crowd gathered around the stage. Nora positioned herself to the side, half hidden behind a tall man so Bryce wouldn't spot her easily. A single spotlight illuminated Bryce as he stepped up to the mic. "Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Road Force Eco Expansion Gala. Tonight, we celebrate the next leap forward in sustainable mobility." A smattering of applause sounded. Audrey joined him on stage, holding a sleek tablet. She gave him a gracious nod. "Bryce's leadership has ushered us into a new era. We're unveiling details of a brand new product line, fully electric SUVs aimed at bridging the gap between luxury and environmental responsibility." Nora stifled a scoff. The slideshow behind them displayed glossy renderings of sleek SUVs, animations swirling in digital perfection. Bryce continued, voice smooth. "We've partnered with top-tier suppliers, ensuring the highest battery efficiency. Our target range surpasses 350 miles per charge, with advanced torque distribution for an exhilarating drive." Nora noticed the crowd's murmur, half impressed, half skeptical. Bryce gestured grandly. Of course, a public prototype demonstration is slated for early next year. Meanwhile, tonight, we share the vision. We welcome potential investors, future collaborators, and passionate supporters to join us in this journey. Join the fantasy, Nora thought. She recorded every word. No mention of the actual tech or the suppliers. No real specifics, just big talk and animations. Audrey took the mic next. We believe in synergy, a synergy of brand, design, and real-world practicality. Roadforce is forging alliances with green tech funds worldwide, ensuring that once we go to market, the entire ecosystem is ready charging infrastructure, app-based monitoring, after-sales service. This is the comprehensive approach that sets us apart. Nora recognized the rhetorical flourish. She'd once written half of Audrey's PR lines at Roadforce. These empty phrases only worked if no one questioned them. She scanned the crowd, noticing more than a few suspicious expressions. After the pitch, polite applause sprinkled the room. Bryce and Audrey beamed, stepping down from the stage. The main lights rose again, and waiters glided among the guests with trays of champagne, encouraging everyone to mingle and discuss. Nora slipped to the side corridor, letting her recorder keep capturing the general hustle. She typed out a quick text to Dean. He made the big speech just hype, no details. Investors skeptical but still curious. Next quarter prototype reveal. Dean's response came swiftly. Figures. Keep your ears open for any slip-ups. If you can corner Bryce, we might get some gold. Nora bit her lip. Cornering Bryce was risky, but she could hover near him, maybe eavesdrop on private convos. All right, let's see what I can do. She slipped back into the throng, carefully edging near Bryce's circle. To Nora's surprise, Bryce broke away momentarily to greet a new group of suits, leaving Audrey briefly alone near the tall display boards. Audrey sipped champagne, her gaze distant, one hand absent-mindedly touching her hair. A small voice in Nora's head said, "Don't bother." But another part reasoned that maybe Audrey was more approachable alone. With a final breath for courage, Nora approached quietly. Audrey. Audrey turned, eyes widening in recognition. Immediately, her posture stiffened. Nora? She glanced around. What I mean, you don't work here anymore. Nora forced a polite smile. I'm just here representing a small eco-consultancy, checking out Roadforce's new direction. Audrey's lips tightened. You left so abruptly. Well, Nora said evenly, I didn't have much choice. A flicker of regret crossed Audrey's face. I'm sorry things ended badly. Bryce insisted on changes. You know how it goes. That's an understatement, Nora replied, voice laced with tension. But anyway, I see you two are forging ahead with big promises. Audrey took a small sip of champagne, gaze darting across the crowd. Yes, we have strong concepts. The board's behind us. Nora folded her arms. But do you have the technology? Or is this more speculation? Audrey bristled. We do. Bryce is in negotiations with suppliers. We'll have prototypes soon. An uneasy silence lingered. Nora decided to push gently. Audrey, is everything all right? You look stressed. Audrey's eyes flashed. I'm fine. Just a busy event. Nora read the lines in Audrey's tense posture. She'd seen a flicker of guilt, or maybe confusion, but Audrey wasn't about to confide in her. That was clear. A half-laugh escaped Audrey's throat, tinged with defensiveness. You always were a worrier. I'm not your concern anymore. Please excuse me. Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked off, heading toward Bryce's circle. Nora watched her go, a mix of pity and exasperation swirling. Possibly Audrey sensed the house of cards was wobbling, but she'd pinned her future to Bryce's star. Nora retreated to a quieter corner near some modern art displays, texting an update to Dean and Vanessa. Audrey's stonewalling. Bryce is with investors. Gonna try to eavesdrop. Vanessa replied with a simple, be careful. Moments later, Bryce led a group of 3 men toward a side lounge area roped off for private conversations. Nora recognized one man from the automotive press, a journalist known for digging deep. The other 2 wore the polite but guarded expressions of potential big-money investors. Nora drifted behind them, careful to remain just out of direct line of sight. She pretended to admire a painting on the wall, inching close enough that her hidden audio device might pick up scraps of their talk. Bryce's voice, low but distinct, carried over the lounge's hush. "We're absolutely on schedule. The expansions are fully funded," the journalist asked. "So you can confirm the battery supplier is locked in?" A slight pause. Bryce cleared his throat. "We're finalizing terms, but it's basically a done deal. The official announcement is forthcoming." One investor pressed, "Because rumor has it you were in talks with Eastbolt, but they pulled out." Bryce gave a dismissive chuckle. "Ha, just gossip. In fact, we have a superior arrangement with a new partner, top secret, but it'll surpass anything Eastbolt offered." The journalist scribbled a note. "Mind going on record about expected range? You mentioned 350 miles. Some insiders say the industry average is still around 280 for similarly sized SUVs," Bryce answered, voice smooth. "We have an exclusive technology pipeline that ensures advanced chemistry. Let's just say we'll surprise everyone." Nora clenched her jaw at the blatant lies. She wished she could barge in and ask for details, but she held back, letting the device capture every word. Then Bryce's phone buzzed. He stepped aside, muttering, "Excuse me." The journalist and investors conferred among themselves, glancing around. Nora seized the moment to carefully slip behind a tall, decorative divider, hoping to catch more once Bryce rejoined them. Sure enough, Bryce returned, speaking in a hushed but irritated tone. "That was one of the board members. They want a mid-quarter briefing. Just a formality, nothing to worry about." The journalist gave a sly grin. "I'd love to attend that briefing." "Unfortunately, it's closed to outsiders," Bryce said quickly, "but rest assured, everything is under control." The group pivoted to talk about potential market release timelines. Nora recognized more empty spin. The journalist jotted notes but looked far from convinced. After a few more pleasantries, Bryce escorted the men away, presumably to rejoin the main event. Nora let out a slow breath. She'd gleaned nothing concrete besides the clear sense Bryce had no actual battery supplier locked. That alone was valuable. She quickly tapped out a text to Dean. "No real supply deals. He's bluffing about a secret partner. Also a board briefing soon, he's uneasy." Dean's reply, "That's huge. Good job. Get out safe. We have enough for tonight." Nora pocketed her phone, heart racing. It was time to leave before she pushed her luck. She wove back through the crowd. Right as she neared the exit, she spotted Audrey again, scanning the ballroom as though searching for someone. For half a heartbeat, Nora wondered if Audrey sensed she was being watched. But Audrey's gaze slid right past her. In the lobby, Nora dropped her empty champagne flute on a passing tray, exhaling relief. She'd accomplished her mission. Another piece of the puzzle fell into place. Roadforce's innovation claims were smoke and mirrors. Slipping outside, she breathed in the crisp night air, the Redwood Hotel's grand facade looming behind her. A line of black town cars waited under the canopy. She spotted her own ride, an inconspicuous sedan hired just for tonight. Before climbing in, she looked back at the bright windows. From inside, faint music and chatter drifted. Perhaps Audrey was standing in there, hosting a dream that would soon implode. Bryce was making bigger and bigger claims while lacking the substance to back them. Your time is running out, Nora thought. And with that, she slid into the back seat, instructing the driver to head for the safe rendezvous. The next phase of Dean's plan was about to intensify. Back at the workshop, well past midnight, Dean waited with restless energy. The overhead lights cast long shadows on the scattered prototypes. Vanessa was there too, perched on a stool, arms crossed anxiously. Finally, they heard a car pull up. Nora entered, cheeks flushed from the cool air, still wearing her formal dress. She brandished her phone triumphantly. "Got some good recordings." Dean's grin was immediate. "Perfect. Did he say anything incriminating?" She shrugged out of her coat. "Nothing overtly illegal, but plenty of evidence he's bluffing about suppliers. He's definitely spinning wild fantasies for investors." Vanessa rubbed her hands together eagerly. "Let's see if we can glean more about any hidden shell companies or fake deals. If we can prove Bryce is lying to investors, that's grounds for major trouble." Nora placed the phone on the table, hooking it up to a laptop to transfer the audio. He also mentioned a board briefing that he seemed worried about. Might be the board pressing him for progress. Could be our chance to push them to the edge. Dean folded his arms, gaze intense. If the board corners him and he can't produce real results, they'll panic. Meanwhile, if we step forward with Zentech's real breakthroughs around that time, we could lure away major investors. A double blow. Exactly, Nora said. She stifled a yawn. Sorry, it's been a long night. But I'm too wired to sleep. Vanessa offered her a half-empty can of energy drink with a wry smile. Welcome to the meltdown zone. They listened to the recordings, making notes of key quotes. Bryce's confident declarations about top-secret battery suppliers and finalized deals formed the core of his pitch. If the truth was that he had no such deals, Roadforce was teetering on the edge of false advertising or even investor fraud. Dean's eyes gleamed with a cold satisfaction. This is enough for us to quietly tip off certain investors that Bryce's claims have zero backing. Then, when we approach them with Zentech's proven data, they'll realize where the real future lies. Nora nodded, exhaustion settling over her. We just have to time it carefully. Bryce is still a slick talker. He might spin it if we move too soon. Vanessa tapped the laptop screen. Well, we already have a short list of folks who expressed interest in advanced EV solutions. We can start reaching out discreetly, offering a behind-the-curtain peek at our prototypes. Dean stared at the pinned blueprint on the corkboard. The faint hum of the overhead light accentuated the tension in the workshop. Let's do it. We'll arrange private demos, maybe one or two at first, with NDAs. Once they see real hardware, Roadforce's PR illusions pale in comparison. A hush followed as each of them contemplated the significance. This step would be the pivot from a secret operation to a very real competitor that could destabilize Roadforce's entire investor pool. Nora broke the silence. By the way, I saw Audrey. Dean's jaw set. Yeah? She looked tense. Didn't say much besides the usual PR talk. Hard to tell if she's realizing Bryce is a sinking ship or if she's too deep in to back out. A complicated swirl of emotions flickered in Dean's expression, but he shook it off. Doesn't matter. She made her choice. I'm not saving her from it. Vanessa placed a hand gently on his shoulder. You deserve better anyway. He gave a tight nod, turning his focus back to the data on the screen. Thanks, but let's keep pushing forward. We're close to the kill shot. That night, they parted ways around 2 a.m. Nora heading to her temporary apartment, Vanessa riding off on her motorcycle, Dean staying behind in the workshop to lock up. As he closed the rolling doors, he glanced at the starry sky, mind racing with thoughts of the next moves. They had evidence of Bryce's duplicity. They had an innovative technology stack that soared beyond anything Roadforce could muster. They had the beginnings of an investor contact list. The confrontation was indeed igniting, and soon, Bryce would find the spotlight turning harshly on him. A week slipped by in a blur of intense activity. Dean orchestrated a series of hush-hush demonstrations for select venture capitalists and green tech funds. One by one, these meetings took place in an unmarked industrial zone about 15 miles from their main workshop, just a bare concrete space where they could safely power up a partial prototype without prying neighbors. At first, they invited only those who'd shown genuine interest in advanced EV technology. Nora, now acting as Zentech's interim CFO, set strict NDAs. Anyone stepping foot in that space had to sign binding confidentiality clauses. Dean and Vanessa would then unveil the battery module, run performance tests on a dyno bench, and show real-time data from Vanessa's software. The reaction was consistently awe. Investors' faces lit with surprise when the numbers soared beyond typical benchmarks. Some asked if this was vaporware, but Dean calmly explained the underlying breakthroughs in chemistry and motor architecture. By the end of each demo, they wore expressions of near disbelief and eagerness. In the smoky hush after the last demonstration of the day, Terry Alvarez, a stern-faced investor from the gala, turned to Dean. Why haven't I heard of Zentech Solutions before? Dean shrugged, feigning modesty. We're a stealth operation, building the next wave. We wanted to finalize the technology before going public. She glanced at the data readouts again. You realize this is game-changing, right? If you can mass-produce these modules, you could corner the EV battery market. Dean offered a measured smile. That's our intention. We'll need capital infusion for manufacturing scale, but we plan to keep control over the IP. Terry tapped her pen thoughtfully. Well, I'm certainly interested. Let's continue discussions. I know a few funds that would jump at this if the supply chain can be nailed down. Nora stepped in gracefully. We're exploring multiple partnership avenues. As you can see, we have a fully functioning prototype stage. The next step is finalizing supplier alliances for raw materials. Terry nodded. Understood. Let's set a formal follow-up. I'm on board for deeper negotiations. Dean breathed an internal sigh of relief. Another potential big fish hooked. Once Terry left, he turned to Nora and Vanessa, exchanging triumphant grins. Nora stored the demonstration data under heavy encryption. That's the third investor this week who's basically said they're in. Vanessa lowered the motor test rig's power, ensuring everything cooled safely. Soon we'll have the capital. Then we can go all out with a pilot production line. Dean leaned against a crate, adrenaline coursing through him. And that's when road force becomes obsolete. Midweek, while finalizing some test results, Dean's phone buzzed with a call from Harold, the old chairman of road force. He'd been lying low at the company, trying to keep an eye on Bryce's chaos. Dean answered promptly, stepping away from the hum of the workshop machines. Harold? Harold's weary voice came through. Dean, I'm about done here. Bryce is pushing the board to approve massive spending for a new marketing campaign, millions of dollars. Meanwhile, actual R&D budgets keep getting cut. It's madness. Dean pictured Harold massaging his temples in frustration. I'm sorry. I know it's painful to watch. I can't even get Audrey to see reason. She just sides with Bryce, believing the PR will solve everything. But the board's beginning to whisper. They're worried about the lack of real prototypes. If Bryce doesn't show them something soon, they might stage a revolt. Dean paced between crates, eyes narrowed. So we're nearing a turning point. Exactly. Bryce scheduled a big board meeting in 2 weeks. He claims he'll bring evidence of a battery supplier and initial production specs. I suspect he has nothing. If that meeting fails, the board could oust him. Dean let out a breath. And if they oust him, Audrey's position might also fall apart. Yes, but watch out, he might do something desperate. People like Bryce don't go down gently. I'm stepping down as chairman after that meeting, by the way. I can't keep endorsing his fiasco. Dean nodded, a swirl of relief and sadness for Harold. I understand. Thank you for staying as long as you have. The day you step down, I'll have an opportunity to approach some old board members, maybe. Harold gave a low chuckle. Perhaps. But once you come out of stealth, Road Force might be the one approaching you. They ended the call with mutual respect. Dean stared at the swirling dust motes in the workshop's overhead light, mind spinning, a toe-week ticking clock until Bryce's day of reckoning at the board. If all lined up, Zentech could time a partial reveal right around then, ensuring Road Force's meltdown. He could practically taste the revenge. The next day, Vanessa cornered Dean while Nora was out visiting a potential new investor. She pointed at her laptop screen, eyes glittering. I've been sifting through that offshore pattern you flagged from Nora's notes. I found something big. Dean leaned over, scanning the lines of code and account references. What are we looking at? It appears Bryce set up multiple shell entities for consultation services. Funds from Road Force funnel into these shells, then vanish, but I've traced a chunk reappearing in a private account under Bryce's name in the Caymans. Dean's eyes narrowed. So he's outright embezzling money from Road Force. Pretty much. He's laundered it through at least 3 layers. Legally, it's murky, but if we present this data properly, it's a slam-dunk case of misappropriation. A surge of triumph coursed through Dean. If Bryce was indeed stealing from Road Force, he could face jail time, not just a corporate meltdown. We'll hold on to this as our nuclear option. If the board tries to shield Bryce, we can blow everything open. Vanessa nodded, grin fierce. So how do we handle it? Anonymously tip the authorities? Or wait to see how the board meeting goes? Dean rubbed his chin, thinking. Let's see if we can quietly let certain board members know. The second they realize Bryce has been siphoning company funds, they might revolt even faster. But we need to ensure we're not implicated. Right. We're not exactly squeaky clean in how we got some of these documents. Dean half laughed. True. But we didn't break any laws to get them. Nora had partial, legit access, and you just connected dots in the publicly visible troves. It's a gray area, but I doubt anyone can pin hacking on us. Vanessa's eyes gleamed with excitement. He's going down, Dean. He exhaled, glancing at the workshop door. Yes, let's orchestrate this carefully. We can't let him wiggle free by painting us as saboteurs. Our ultimate aim is a full, legitimate unveiling of Zentech and Bryce's ruin. She gave a resolute nod. I'm with you all the way. That afternoon, as part of her quiet outreach to old Road Force staff, Nora arranged to meet an ex-colleague for coffee. She settled into a booth at a small cafe, checking her watch. The ex-colleague was late. Suddenly, the bell over the door chimed, and to Nora's shock, Audrey walked in instead, scanning the room until her gaze landed on Nora. The hush in the cafe seemed to amplify the tension. Nora stiffened. Did her ex-colleague bail and tip off Audrey? She considered grabbing her purse and leaving, but Audrey locked eyes and approached with a purposeful stride. They faced each other across the small table. Audrey's expression was guarded, but not outright hostile. Can I sit? Nora nodded curtly, heart hammering. Audrey lowered herself into the seat, clasping her hands. She wore a casual sweater and jeans, no sign of the polished PR front. For a moment, they sat in awkward silence. A server approached. Audrey waved them off. Finally, Audrey spoke, voice subdued. Nora, we need to talk. I didn't come here to argue. Nora squared her shoulders. What do you want? Audrey sighed, glancing at the cafe's chalkboard menu as if stalling. Bryce told me you're meddling in Road Force affairs, that you're out to sabotage us. But I also know you left because you couldn't support his approach, so I thought maybe we could clear the air. Nora forced a quiet laugh. Clear the air? You helped him kick Dean out of his own company, Audrey. Audrey flinched. It's not that simple. He was, she trailed off, eyes troubled. Look, we all made mistakes, but Bryce is the CEO now and we're trying to pivot. I'd rather not see Road Force destroyed. People's jobs are at stake. Nora's pulse quickened. Then you should worry about Bryce's leadership. He's lying to investors. He's ignoring actual R&D. A flicker of desperation crossed Audrey's face. You don't understand the pressure he's under. The board demands results. Bryce says he's close to finalizing a battery partnership. And you believe him? Nora asked pointedly. Audrey's gaze dropped to the table. He's always pulled through before. Nora inhaled, trying to keep her tone even. Audrey, you know me. I was in Road Force's finance department for years. Bryce has no real solutions. He's funneling money away. If you're protecting him, you're complicit in something that could bury all of you. Tears glistened in Audrey's eyes. She blinked them away quickly. It's not that straightforward. I can't just walk out. I have to hold everything together for the company, for the kids, for everything. Nora's anger flared. And what about Dean? You think he deserved to lose everything? Audrey closed her eyes briefly. I regret that, but Dean was always so I don't know. He was distant. He poured all his time into R&D. Bryce was there, supportive, promised me that we could take Road Force global. I was naive, but it's done. Nora stared at her, astonished by the raw confession. She realized Audrey was more trapped than she let on, caught in Bryce's gravitational pull, with no easy exit, but that didn't absolve the betrayal. After a moment, Audrey cleared her throat. Bryce is suspicious you're feeding info to someone. He's convinced there's a new competitor about to overshadow us, but he can't figure out who. Nora suppressed a smirk. Is that why you're here? To see if I'll spill something? Audrey shook her head. No, I genuinely wanted to see if there's a way to keep Road Force from collapsing, to protect the employees. If you know something that can help me steer Bryce to a safer path, I'd do it. The server reappeared, and they both declined to order anything. Nora's mind spun. She realized Audrey might be fishing for inside knowledge about Zentech, but part of her also sensed a flicker of sincerity. Nobody can save Road Force if Bryce is scamming investors, Nora said bluntly. Unless he steps down or the board removes him, the company's on a collision course with disaster. Audrey's shoulders sagged. I can't just oust Bryce, and the board, they rely on me for PR. If I side against him, it'll be chaos. Nora softened her tone slightly. Chaos is coming, Audrey. Better to be on the right side of truth, but it's your call. Audrey clenched her hands. After a long pause, she stood abruptly, eyes moist. I'm sorry. I don't know how to fix any of this. Then she turned and walked out, leaving Nora rattled. Something about Audrey's vulnerability felt real, but it didn't erase the betrayal, or the fact she was still defending Bryce. Nora exhaled, drained, as the door swung shut behind Audrey. She texted Dean a succinct update. Met Audrey. She's torn but still with Bryce. No sign she'll sabotage him. She's worried about the company's collapse. Seems trapped. Dean's reply came almost immediately. Let her stew in it. Our plan proceeds. Nora closed her eyes, finishing the last few sips of her coffee. Yes, she thought. Our plan proceeds. Dean and Nora decided to use the offshore account evidence strategically. Nora drafted an anonymous packet with details of Bryce's suspected embezzlement, ready to be mailed or emailed to certain board members. Meanwhile, Dean reached out discreetly to Miss Clark, discussing the best legal approach if Bryce tried to retaliate. A day later, Miss Clark called with her typical crisp efficiency. Dean, if you want to blow the whistle on Bryce's financial misconduct, do it carefully. The board might hush it up if they think it'll damage Roadforce's reputation. You should only reveal it when it's guaranteed to cause the maximum impact, like right before a critical meeting. Dean paced behind a stack of crates, phone pressed to his ear. Bryce has a board meeting in about a week and a half. That might be the perfect time. Clark's voice was measured. Yes, if you release partial evidence to the board just before, they might confront him. Or if he tries to lie about some new partnership, you drop the bomb. Either way, he's cornered. Dean nodded slowly. Got it. Thanks, Miss Clark. I appreciate your counsel. He ended the call, adrenaline humming in his veins. Each piece was in place. Zentech had credible investor interest. They had evidence of Bryce's criminal acts, and the board was nearing meltdown if he didn't produce real results. One final push, Dean thought, gazing at the bank of monitors that displayed the battery test results. Once we seal a major funding deal, we'll have the upper hand. He tapped out a quick text to Vanessa and Nora. We do final investor calls next few days. Then prepare to drop Bryce's offshore data on the board. Let's aim for maximum chaos. Nora replied, Understood. The board meeting is next Friday. Perfect timing. Vanessa chimed in, Let's get ready to blow their illusions sky high. With the board meeting approaching, Dean scheduled an online conference call with 3 key prospective partners, Terry Alvarez, Gregory Ellis, and a consortium rep who simply introduced himself as Mr. Nguyen from a larger green tech fund. All 3 had visited their demonstration site. Now, Dean wanted to confirm if they were ready to commit capital. They held the call in the workshop's makeshift office. Dim lights overhead, Nora at her laptop controlling slides, Vanessa prepared with the engineering data. Dean spoke confidently as Managing Director of Zentech Solutions, never once mentioning his real name or background. So, he concluded after a thorough rundown of the prototypes, we're seeking an initial Series A of up to $70 million to build a pilot manufacturing line. We estimate a 12 to 18-month timeline to market-ready solutions. In return, we offer equity plus licensing rights to certain markets. Terry Alvarez nodded. That's a steep ask, but your tech is undeniable. My firm's prepared to take a lead role, provided we confirm some supply chain partnerships. We can introduce you to raw materials vendors as well. Gregory Ellis added, If we do this, we'll want to see a roadmap for scaling to tens of thousands of battery modules a year. Because trust me, the demand will be insane once you're public. Dean smiled. We have advanced negotiations with certain suppliers. Nora gave him a subtle nod. She'd been researching multiple chemical producers who could handle the high-grade materials they needed. And what about brand strategy? Nguyen asked. Are you licensing to existing automakers or planning to produce your own EV? Vanessa took that question. Initially, we'll license. Our battery and motor kit can drop into existing chassis designs. Down the line, we may explore a full in-house vehicle. But first, we want wide adoption. The 3 potential investors conferred, their faces thoughtful in the video feeds. Eventually, Terry said, All right, I think we're aligned. Let's move forward drafting a term sheet. We can each commit a portion of the $70 million. A wave of relief washed over Dean. That's wonderful news. We'll have Miss Clark and Nora coordinate the details. Thank you all for believing in us. The call ended, Nora exhaled shakily. Looks like we just secured major funding. Vanessa let out a delighted whoop. Holy hell, this is real. We're going to have the money to scale up. Dean pulled them both into a quick group hug, a sense of triumph brimming in his chest. We did it. Now all that remains is the final confrontation with Bryce. Nora's grin turned wry. He has no idea the tsunami about to hit him. As the day wrapped up, the three of them locked the workshop, stepping outside into the fresh evening air. A sense of electric excitement coursed through them. Zentech was on the cusp of a massive leap. Dean's thoughts drifted to the upcoming board meeting. He pictured Bryce swaggering in, lying through his teeth. Then he envisioned the moment the board learned about the offshore accounts, the moment the illusions broke. Soon after, Zentech's unveiling would sweep the EV market. Yes, the tension was rising to a fever pitch. Another short window of calm remained before the storm. They each parted ways, driving off under the silver sliver of moonlight. In the hush of his car, Dean allowed a small, confident smile. He had waited, planned, and built in the shadows. Now it was time to watch Bryce's empire topple. The date circled on Dean's mental calendar arrived. Friday, the day Bryce would supposedly present proof of progress to the Road Force Board. Harold texted early that morning. They're expecting a big show. Wish me luck. Meanwhile, Dean, Nora, and Vanessa convened at the workshop, setting up a war room environment. Their plan hinged on timing. If Bryce tried to bullshit the board about a mysterious battery supplier or claimed any real prototypes, Nora would instantly email the board an anonymous packet of data showing the money laundering evidence and the emptiness of Bryce's partnerships. Additionally, they had prepared a press release about Zentech's upcoming official formation with serious investor backing, though they'd keep Dean's identity hidden for now. Releasing it at the right moment could cause a massive market stir, drawing attention away from Road Force. Around mid-morning, Nora's phone buzzed. She put it on speaker. Harold's voice came through, hushed. I'm stepping into the boardroom soon. Bryce is swaggering around, telling Audrey everything's in the bag. Let's see how he explains the lack of any real contract. Dean paced with restless energy. We'll be on standby. The second you text, we unleash the documents. Vanessa triple-checked the pre-drafted email and press release. Everything was ready to go with a single click. Got the rocket fueled, she said wryly. Harold inhaled audibly. Okay, I'm going in. Wish me strength. They ended the call, tension thick enough to slice. For the next hour, Dean and Nora hovered around their phones, occasionally refreshing news feeds. Vanessa typed furiously, finalizing code for a next-gen motor optimization. The seconds dragged. Finally, near noon, Nora's phone chimed with a short text from Harold. Bryce is lying about a Swiss battery partner. The board is suspicious. Send the docs. Nora and Dean exchanged grim nods. Vanessa hit the button. The email with evidence of Bryce's offshore accounts soared through the digital ether, addressed to key board members, masked behind an anonymous account. Now we wait, Dean whispered. Miles away in the Road Force boardroom, tension crackled. Bryce concluded his slick presentation about a Swiss battery partner, flipping through meaningless slides. The board was stone-faced. Audrey sat to one side, posture anxious. Harold observed from the corner, arms folded. One board member, a gray-haired man named Stinson, cleared his throat. Bryce, you claim to have a signed MOU with this Swiss entity, but we don't see it in writing. Where's the contract? Bryce forced a smile, tapping on the laptop. We're finalizing the signature. Should come in by the end of the day. I have emails indicating they're fully on board. Stinson exchanged a skeptical glance with another board member, Miss Rourke. Then Miss Rourke's phone beeped. She glanced down. Almost simultaneously, several others received beeps or notifications. They checked their devices, brows furrowing. The silence turned ominous. Bryce blinked. Something happened? Stinson scrolled furiously. I just got an anonymous email with documents. His eyes widened. They show money siphoned from Road Force to shell companies linked to you, Bryce. A ripple of shock traversed the board. Audrey's head snapped up, face going pale. Harold pretended to act stunned, though inside he felt a grim satisfaction. Bryce's face flushed. That's nonsense. Must be some malicious hack. Miss Rourke scrolled further. It's extremely detailed. Bank statements, transfer logs. She looked up, expression stern. This is very serious. Are you telling us these are forged? Bryce sputtered. Of course, they must be. I would never, Stinson hammered the table. We can verify the bank references. If this is true, it's criminal embezzlement. Audrey pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes darting to Bryce in disbelief. Bryce, is this real? He turned to her, face slick with perspiration. No, it's a smear campaign. Probably from that traitor Dean or maybe Nora. They want to sabotage me. A new wave of beeps sounded. The board members rummaged through their devices. Stinson announced, I just got another alert something about a new EV startup, Zentech Solutions, announcing major funding for advanced battery tech. He read from the press release. Zentech claims to have developed a battery with 20% more range than existing designs, fully tested prototypes, and is poised to enter the market. They have multiple investors lined up. Harold coughed lightly to hide a grin. The board erupted in chatter. Miss Rourke glared at Bryce. So, there is already a competitor with real prototypes and you have nothing but slides? And now we discover potential financial improprieties? Bryce tried to keep composure. Road Force can still beat them. This is its sabotage orchestrated by Dean Pressfield. Audrey's voice trembled. Bryce, if you really siphoned funds, we're done. The stock will crash. Bryce slammed the laptop shut. I said it's not true. I'll investigate who's behind these phony documents. Stinson stood, voice shaking with anger. We'll do our own investigation. For now, consider your status as CEO in grave jeopardy. We might call an emergency shareholder meeting. This meeting is over. Harold quietly gathered his things. Bryce glared around, fists clenched, sweat beading on his forehead. Audrey looked as if the floor had dropped beneath her. With that, the boardroom dissolved into chaos. Audrey chased Bryce into the hallway. He was tapping furiously on his phone, presumably trying to contact lawyers or do damage control. She grabbed his arm. Bryce, talk to me. Is any of this true? He rounded on her, eyes wild. What do you think? Of course not. It's all fabricated. Dean or Nora must have manipulated docs. She studied his face, seeing fear etched there. Fear, not righteous indignation. But you always said we had enough funds for the expansions. If you were just funneling money away, how does Road Force even? His expression hardened, voice dropping. Audrey, you don't know the half of what I've done to keep this afloat. Sometimes you have to move money around if the board finds out, they'll crucify me. A tremor ran through her. So you did do it. He glanced away. I told you, it's complicated. We needed personal backups in case Dean sued. Plus, you and I deserve compensation for what we built, right? Don't be naive. She felt a rush of nausea. You and I deserve compensation? That hardly justified potential fraud. What about Dean's new competitor, Zentech? That press release they actually have working prototypes, apparently. Bryce spat. They're probably lying, but we have to handle the board first. I'll call an urgent press conference, spin this as an attack. Audrey looked around, noticing some staffers in the corridor staring at them. She realized that the walls were closing in. What have I done? Bryce hissed. Don't freeze on me. We're in this together. Her tears threatened to spill. She nodded numbly, following him to his office. But a hollow feeling spread in her gut, the final realization that the illusions were crumbling. Harold quietly slipped out of the building, stepping into the warm midday sun. He dialed Dean's number. Dean picked up. Harold? How did it go? A satisfied chuckle escaped Harold's lips. A total meltdown. The board is furious. Bryce has no legitimate answers, and the entire meeting ended in chaos. I expect an emergency session to formally remove him soon. Dean closed his eyes, relief washing over him. Thank you for letting me know. And for everything. My pleasure, son. I'm officially resigning as chairman now. I can't stand another minute of that place. Dean felt a surge of gratitude and fondness for the older man. I understand. Enjoy your well-deserved rest. You'll always have a place with us if you want it. Harold gave a gruff laugh. I appreciate that. Good luck, Dean. You deserve your redemption. They ended the call. Dean exhaled, turning to Nora and Vanessa. It happened. Bryce got exposed. The board's probably removing him soon. Vanessa pumped a fist in the air. We did it. Nora let out a shaky breath, eyes shining with relief. It's real. He's done. But Dean's gaze flickered with a deeper complexity. We should watch how Audrey plays this. She might jump ship or face the fallout with him. Nora shrugged. After what she did to you, it hardly matters, right? He hesitated. Yeah, right. Yet a part of him, hidden behind the triumphant veneer, still felt the sting of heartbreak. The final wedge between him and Audrey was hammered in place, leaving no chance for reconciliation. News traveled fast. Within a day, rumors of Bryce's alleged embezzlement and the existence of Zentech's game-changing technology rippled through the industry. Road Force's stock price plummeted, investors panicking over the scandal. Public statements from Bryce or Audrey were vague, only fueling the downward spiral. Industry blogs and financial sites buzzed with speculation. Is Road Force done? Who is Zentech's mysterious founder? How did they appear out of nowhere with advanced prototypes? Dean watched from the sidelines, withholding his identity. Miss Clark advised him to remain in stealth until Zentech's funding was fully secured. But seeing the headlines gave him a sense of satisfaction. He texted Nora. Any new updates from your Road Force sources? She replied. Board's planning an emergency vote next week to fire Bryce. Audrey might be in trouble too. She's facing blame for enabling him. Dean stared at the phone, a swirl of conflicting emotions. This was everything he'd worked toward, the downfall of Bryce, the humiliation of Audrey's alliance with him. Yet he felt no uncontaminated joy, just a cold sense of justice. Vanessa approached, reading his expression. You okay? He mustered a nod. Yeah, just seeing it all unfold feels surreal. She squeezed his arm reassuringly. It's your victory, and Zentech's. Soon will overshadow them completely. A day before the board's emergency session, a shocking rumor emerged. Bryce was trying to meet with certain potential investors in a last-ditch attempt to secure real battery tech, presumably to show the board. Maybe he hoped to present a miraculous partnership that would overshadow Zentech's claims. Nora got wind of it from an ex-colleague. Bryce is hunting for any R&D firm he can buy or partner with to produce a quick prototype. He's throwing money around like crazy. Dean smirked. Let him scramble. He won't find anything ready to go. Our tech is leaps ahead. Vanessa snorted. We keep our designs locked up. No way he can replicate them in time. But there was a flicker of worry in Dean's mind. People with Bryce's cunning sometimes pulled off last-minute stunts. He quickly called Miss Clark, reaffirming the security measures around their patents. She assured him, your IP is fully protected. Even if Bryce tries to bribe smaller labs, they can't produce a functional EV battery overnight. I suspect it's pure desperation. That eased Dean's tension. He refocused on finalizing the term sheets with Terry Alvarez and the other investors. Once those signatures were in place, Zentech's war chest would be unstoppable. The morning of the Road Force Board's emergency session arrived. Dean, Nora, and Vanessa gathered at the workshop, eyes on their phones and email, anticipating updates. Sure enough, around midday, the first messages trickled in from Harold and other sources. The board had convened, demanded Bryce produce real evidence of partnerships or prototypes. Bryce apparently fumbled, tried to wave around incomplete NDAs. The board hammered him with questions about the offshore accounts. He had no defense. Audrey attempted some half-hearted PR statements but was largely ignored. The board was livid, the meltdown unstoppable. By mid-afternoon, they voted to remove Bryce from the CEO position, pending a full investigation. Audrey's role as PR head was also suspended. An interim CEO was appointed someone new to the company, with a mandate to salvage what was left. Road Force stock plunged further. Blog headlines read, CEO ousted amid fraud allegations at Road Force. Mysterious rival Zentech gains momentum. Nora let out a long exhale of relief when they read the news. That's it. Bryce is done. They might even press charges if the forensic audit proves the money laundering. Vanessa whooped, high-fiving Dean. We got him! Dean's posture relaxed. Months of careful planning, heartbreak, and scheming had led to this. A wave of emotion coursed through him, vindication, sorrow, anger, all jumbled. But he smiled, stepping away from the monitors. Let's celebrate, yeah? We have investor term sheets coming in soon. Bryce is dethroned. Road Force is in shambles. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Nora's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. An unknown number. Frowning, she answered quietly. A muffled voice spoke. Nora's eyes widened. What? Wait, slow down. She shot Dean a startled look. Audrey? Dean stiffened. She's calling you? Nora turned on speaker. Audrey's voice trembled. I didn't know who else to contact. Bryce is furious, ranting about getting even with you and Dean. He's blaming everyone for his downfall. He's scaring me. Dean's brow furrowed. A swirl of complex feelings rose. Nora cut in. Where are you? Audrey's voice cracked. At home. Bryce stormed in, told me to pack my stuff, said we're leaving the country. I refused. He's shouting about me betraying him. I'm worried. Nora met Dean's gaze uncertainly. He saw the conflict in her eyes. Audrey, call the police if you feel unsafe, Nora said firmly. Audrey's breath hitched. I might. But the kids are at my sister's place. I can't let Bryce near them if he's unhinged. Dean exhaled, pinching the bridge of his nose. So much for a neat conclusion. Let her handle it, he whispered to Nora. Nora spoke into the phone. Look, Audrey, if Bryce is violent or threatening, dial 911 right now. A muffled crash echoed over the line. Audrey yelped. He's throwing things, I have to go. The call ended. The workshop fell silent. Nora's hands shook. This is insane. Should we do something? Dean's jaw clenched. He hated that part of him still felt protective, but he forced it down. She betrayed me. Let her deal with the consequences. If it gets truly dangerous, the cops will intervene. Vanessa swallowed, not entirely convinced. Still, it's messed up. Bryce might do something crazy. Dean stared at the blank phone screen. He's lost everything. He might lash out. But she chose this path. Nora placed a hand on his shoulder. I understand. Let's not get ourselves entangled in that mess. He nodded numbly. They had no obligation to rescue Audrey. She'd shown her loyalty to Bryce after all. That evening, they learned from the local news that police had been called to Audrey's home for a domestic disturbance. Bryce was taken away for questioning, Audrey unhurt, apparently. The swirling scandal deepened. Road Force's stock cratered. The board threatened legal action. By midnight, the blogosphere was ablaze with images of Bryce in handcuffs, rumors of domestic assault charges. Audrey was rumored to be in meltdown. The entire fiasco was grim. Dean sat alone at a desk in the workshop, a single lamp illuminating his weary face. He rubbed his eyes. This was the price of betrayal, laid bare. He reminded himself that none of this was his doing. Bryce and Audrey had orchestrated their own downfall. Vanessa approached quietly, a coffee in hand. Hey, you okay? He accepted the cup with a nod. Yeah, just pondering how I got here. I won, but it feels so hollow. She gently squeezed his shoulder. Sometimes revenge is like that. But think of the bigger picture. You have your tech, your company, your self-respect. Road Force can't overshadow you anymore. He nodded, sipping the bitter coffee. True. Let me focus on that. As the night wore on, the news cycles hammered Bryce's downfall, speculated about possible jail time for financial crimes, and painted Audrey as a complicit figure. Dean turned off the radio in the workshop, stepping outside into the stillness. Moonlight cast sharp shadows over the empty parking lot. He stared up at the stars, feeling a quiet finality. The twisted reversals were complete. Bryce's empire crumbled. Audrey was paying the price for aligning with him, and Road Force teetered on the brink. Meanwhile, Zentech soared, on the verge of official funding and unstoppable progress. Dean let the cool air wash over him, inhaling slowly, exhaling the last vestiges of heartbreak. He was free. With that realization, a sense of calm enveloped him. Soon, the world would see the genius he'd nurtured all along, and those who betrayed him would be left in the dust, forced to grapple with the wreckage they created. He whispered into the silent night, "It's done, and we're just getting started." The day after Road Force's board voted out Bryce Harrison felt oddly silent for Dean Pressfield. He was used to the constant tension of outmaneuvering Bryce, waiting for that perfect moment to strike. Now that it was all done, the hush that followed felt almost unsettling. Late morning sun poured through the windows of the workshop, illuminating the tables piled with electronics and mechanical prototypes. Dean leaned against a workbench, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Vanishing steam swirled lazily in the light. Nora sat across from him, tapping at a laptop. They were both waiting for Vanessa to arrive. She was running late, apparently stuck in traffic. Dean exhaled slowly, checking the headlines on his phone for what must have been the 10th time that morning. Roadforce CEO ousted amid fraud investigation board appoints interim chief. Bryce Harrison, under scrutiny for financial misconduct. Domestic dispute with PR head, Audrey under police investigation. He scrolled further, noticing smaller mentions of a rising competitor. Zentech Solutions emerges from stealth mode, new battery tech attracts big investors. A quiet satisfaction stirred. They'd come a long way from that first night he spent in a dingy motel, reeling from Audrey's betrayal. Nora cleared her throat. No new direct updates from Harold yet. He said he'll call later to confirm how the board's reacting to the prospect of a forensic audit. But it looks like Bryce is out for good. Dean nodded, setting his phone aside. He'll probably face criminal charges if the audit reveals enough. I doubt he can charm his way out of this. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. And Audrey? Any sign of what she plans to do next? A flicker of unresolved emotion passed over Dean's face. Not sure. She's suspended from Roadforce, likely blacklisted from any real PR role. She must be panicking, especially after that blow-up with Bryce. Nora gave a soft, ironic laugh. She wanted a high-status life, but she got an implosion instead. Dean couldn't help feeling a pang of sympathy. He remembered how Audrey once had big dreams of being a public relations powerhouse, traveling the world with him, building a legacy. Now she was left clinging to a sinking ship. And if Bryce's meltdown was as bad as the rumors indicated, she might be on her own. Still, part of him hardened. She made her bed, he reminded himself. I owe her nothing. The workshop's rolling door screeched open, and in strode Vanessa, wearing her usual motorcycle jacket and a helmet slung under one arm. She wore a triumphant grin, as though the morning traffic fiasco hadn't dimmed her mood at all. Guys, she said, setting her helmet aside, I just came from a quick meet with one of our soon-to-be investors. They're itching for us to go public with a big demonstration like an official unveiling of Zentech's first prototype vehicle, something that cements us in the public eye and puts Roadforce in the rearview mirror for good. Dean perked up, exchanging a look with Nora. An unveiling? We do have the battery modules working, but do we have a vehicle frame we can showcase? Vanessa shrugged. We can adapt a standard EV chassis. Maybe we partner with a small boutique car maker who'll let us drop in our technology. The important thing is spectacle media coverage, a test drive, real data. That's how we snatch up consumer attention. Nora turned her laptop around. I've been browsing small specialty manufacturers. A few are open to licensing or co-branding. If we approach them carefully, we could have a functional vehicle shell in a few months. Maybe faster if we pay top dollar. Dean considered it. Going public in a dramatic way would supercharge Zentech's reputation, especially now that Roadforce's brand was tanking. This might be the perfect moment, he murmured. Investors want reassurance we're more than just lab prototypes. The media loves a David vs. Goliath story, Zentech toppling the old guard. It'll bury Bryce's fiasco under our success narrative. Vanessa's grin widened. Exactly. Let me line up a short list of potential partners. Then we can schedule a real unveiling in, say, 2 or 3 months. Make it happen, Dean said, excitement stirring. We'll keep the timeline realistic, but let's not drag our feet. We want to strike while the iron's hot. Nora tapped her pen on the desk, a determined glint in her eye. I'll handle budgeting for that prototype build. We just finalized the term sheets for the first round of funding, so we'll have the capital. Let's ensure Miss Clark reviews any deals we sign with outside manufacturers. Sounds good, Dean agreed. He felt an undercurrent of exhilaration. This was the next phase, transforming Zentech from a stealth operation into a headline-making phenomenon. If it all went smoothly, he'd not only surpass Roadforce's old achievements, but also make any lingering loyalty to Bryce or Audrey seem laughable. That afternoon, Dean did something he hadn't been able to do in a while. He visited Evan and Lily openly, albeit discreetly. With Bryce discredited, Audrey's authority over the kids' schedules was at least temporarily up in the air, and after everything that had happened, Audrey had grudgingly agreed via text to let them see him. She didn't add any supportive note or apology, just a curt, "They'll be at my sister's place after school. You can stop by if you want." If he wanted? The arrogance still stung, but it didn't matter, he did want to see them, and that was enough. He arrived at Audrey's sister's home, a cozy suburban house with a pale blue exterior and neat hedges. Lily answered the door, squealing happily at the sight of her dad. Evan, now inching up toward teenage lankiness, came to the doorway with a cautious smile. "Dad," Lily chirped, hugging him tight. "We missed you." Dean's heart clenched. He wrapped his arms around his daughter, inhaling the scent of her shampoo, feeling a longing he hadn't known how to express. Evan hovered, hands in pockets, trying to play it cool, but Dean caught the relief in the boy's eyes. "Hey, buddy," Dean said, pulling him into a brief side hug. Evan let him, the faintest grin tugging at his lips. They moved inside, Lily dragging Dean to the living room. The sister Aunt Paula was out on errands, apparently, so they had the place to themselves. Dean studied them with a mixture of pride and sorrow. He'd missed so many moments, thanks to Bryce's manipulations and Audrey's coldness. Evan plopped onto the sofa. "We heard about what happened at Road Force. Mom's suspended. She's been really upset." He paused, glancing at Lily. "But she said we can see you again, so that's good." Dean nodded slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I'm sorry for all the chaos. I never wanted you guys caught in the middle." He tried to keep his voice steady. "But it's over now. Bryce lost. I'm focusing on building something new." Lily's eyes shone with curiosity. "Is that the new Zentech thing I saw on some blog? People said you have super cool batteries." Dean chuckled, a warm pride blooming. "You read about us? Yeah, that's mine, my new project. And it's going really well." Evan leaned forward, interest piqued. "So are you going to make your own car brand or what?" Dean laughed. "Eventually. Right now we're licensing the tech to manufacturers, but yes, maybe we'll build a real Zentech car someday soon." Lily's face lit up. "That's so awesome. Can we see it?" "Not quite yet," Dean admitted. "We're still finalizing the first demonstration, but I promise once it's ready for a test drive, you'll be the first kids to ride in it." Evan pretended to consider. "Deal." They spent the next hour chatting about school, sports, and Lily's latest obsession with a robotics club. Dean felt each minute was precious, a piece of fatherhood he'd been denied. He vowed not to let Audrey or Bryce come between him and his children again. He might still need to fight some legal battles to cement custody or visitation rights, but for now, it felt good just to be with them. Eventually, Paula returned, giving Dean a polite greeting. She'd always been somewhat neutral in the family drama, though she privately hinted at disapproval of Audrey's choices. She offered Dean coffee and a seat at the kitchen table while Lily showed him a small art project. Time drifted quickly until, with a bittersweet ache, Dean realized he had to leave. He promised the kids he'd visit again soon no matter what. They clung to him at the door, Lily especially, as though fearing he might vanish for another year. When he finally drove away, a storm of emotions churned inside him: love for his kids, regret at lost time, and a renewed determination to secure them a stable future, free from Bryce's shadow. As the next week rolled on, Nora busied herself with drafting job postings and reaching out to engineers, programmers, and logistical experts who might form the core of Zentech's expanded team. The initial investor commitments meant they could pay competitive salaries, something Dean insisted upon, wanting the brightest minds aboard. Vanessa oversaw the technical screening, talking to potential hires who'd proven track records in EV design or battery systems. A few recognized her name from her previous work in software engineering. Some even recognized Dean's old accomplishments at Road Force, though he remained cautious about disclosing his full role there. In a small side office they'd partitioned off from the workshop, they held interviews via video calls. Each candidate was required to sign an NDA before glimpsing any of Zentech's real data. Dean felt a strange thrill, like building Road Force all over again, but this time with a sharper sense of purpose and no illusions about who was loyal. One candidate, a middle-aged mechanical engineer named Carter, impressed them with his deep knowledge of next-gen motor designs. He gave them a thorough critique of Zentek's approach based on the partial info they'd shared, then outlined potential improvements. By the end of the call, Dean was convinced they needed Carter. "Hire him," Dean told Nora, a grin forming. "That's the kind of brain we want. No fear of challenging assumptions." Nora wrote down a note, beaming. "On it." Day after day, more hires joined. Zentek was still small, but the synergy crackled. They set up a separate facility across town for a pilot assembly line, renting a large industrial warehouse that had once been used for shipping goods. The arrangement was hush-hush, but the local rumor mill eventually noted some EV startup moving in. The excitement grew, though public details were scarce. Vanessa occasionally posted cryptic job ads on LinkedIn. Cutting-edge battery startup seeks fearless innovators. Confidential project. Applications flooded in, far more than they could handle. It helped that Roadforce's downfall had spooked many engineers who worried about Bryce's reputation tainting the entire EV sector. A new player, unencumbered by scandal, felt like a fresh start. Watching Zentek's staff grow from a few scrappy rebels into a cohesive team warmed Dean's heart. It also reminded him that, while revenge had driven him initially, he was now forging a real legacy, one that would surpass anything he'd done with Audrey or Bryce. One evening, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, Dean was locking up the workshop when a familiar figure stepped in from the twilight. Audrey. She stood by the half-open rolling door, arms wrapped around herself, face drawn. Dean froze mid-step, a wave of conflicting emotions crashing over him. She'd never come here before. How had she even found the address? He set down his keyring. "Audrey," he said simply, tension coiling in his gut. She swallowed hard, taking a step forward. "Dean, I didn't know where else to go." He studied her guardedly. "You shouldn't be here. This place is my new start, not yours." She winced but pressed on. I know. Bryce, after the board fired him, everything spiraled. He's facing legal charges. I'm suspended, maybe permanently. I have no job, no savings, and the house is set to be sold if Roadforce decides it was a corporate asset. Her voice cracked. "I might lose everything." Dean forced himself to remain impassive. Part of him wanted to ask, "Did you think about that when you betrayed me?" But he swallowed the barb. "You made your choices," he said coolly. "You and Bryce both." She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I know, I can't justify it. I guess I believed him when he said we could outgrow your old ways. That you were holding the company back. That you cared more about your patents than me." She let out a trembling sigh. "Turns out, I was the fool." A heavy silence settled. Dean's heart pounded. He'd wanted an apology from her for so long, but now that it was here, in the form of broken regret, it felt hollow. "You're not a fool," he said quietly, though the anger still lurked under his skin. "But you let greed and ambition blind you. You let Bryce manipulate you, and you threw me aside in the process." She closed her eyes, tears streaking her cheeks. I don't know how to fix it. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything." He took a measured breath. "I appreciate the apology, but sorry doesn't undo the damage." She nodded, wiping her face. "I understand. I just wanted you to know I regret it all. I only ever wanted success for us, but Bryce twisted everything." He let the words hang, conflicting thoughts whirling, pity, bitterness, a flicker of old affection. Yet he recalled with cruel clarity how she'd chosen to cheat on him in their own bed, how she'd helped Bryce oust him from Roadforce, how she'd hidden the kids from him. Some actions have permanent consequences, he reminded himself. Finally, he spoke. "Look, if you're hoping for me to rescue you, don't. You're on your own. I won't see you homeless because the kids need a mother. But we're finished, Audrey. There's no going back." She swallowed, nodding. "I know." Her voice was a whisper. "I'm staying at my sister's place now. I had to come see you because I just needed you to know I'm truly sorry." His chest tightened. The old Dean might have caved, tried to comfort her. But he was no longer that man. Instead, he gave a curt nod. "You've said your piece." Audrey bit her lip. tears still shining. Then, with a shaky inhalation, she turned and walked back into the dusk. Dean stood motionless, hearing the distant rumble of her car engine. Only when the taillights disappeared did he let out a ragged breath, his entire body trembling with pent-up emotion. Slowly, he picked up his keys and locked the workshop door, swallowing the lump in his throat. He'd long fantasized about forcing Audrey to beg or suffer, but in reality, seeing her broken form left him feeling hollow, not triumphant. The real victory, he reminded himself, was building a life without her manipulations. And he was. Zentek was forging a bright path. He needed no other closure. The next morning, Dean told Nora about Audrey's unexpected visit. They sat at the workshop's makeshift kitchenette, sipping freshly brewed coffee that Nora had just prepared. She listened with pursed lips. "So she basically admitted she messed up?" Nora asked. Dean nodded. "Yeah, she's sorry she's losing everything. I guess she wanted some emotional release or something." Nora gave a small snort. "Well, that's on her. Just be cautious, Dean. Sometimes people come back to sabotage or guilt-trip you when they're cornered." He nodded wearily. "I'm done with her manipulations. She can be sorry all she wants. My focus is on the kids. I'll ensure they have what they need." Nora squeezed his forearm gently. That's the right approach. He offered a half smile, grateful for her steadiness. She'd seen it all up close how Road Force betrayed him, how Audrey's role had devastated his trust. The slow, methodical revenge was nearly complete. Bryce was facing ruin. Audrey's status had collapsed. Road Force itself was teetering, and Zentek soared. It was enough. Even if part of him felt a twinge of sadness for the final shards of his marriage, he'd made his peace. All that remained was the next grand step, showing the world how unstoppable Zentek truly was. In the weeks that followed Bryce's ouster, a storm of legal consequences descended upon him. Road Force's forensic accountants uncovered a web of suspicious transactions, confirming that large sums had indeed been siphoned into shell entities tied to Bryce. Federal investigators soon took notice, leading to an official inquiry for fraud, embezzlement, and possibly tax evasion. Dean watched the headlines with a quiet sense of closure. If the law sentenced Bryce to prison, it would be a more definitive punishment than anything Dean could have orchestrated. This was no mere firing, this was potential jail time. Nora, scanning daily news, offered updates. He's trying to blame a rogue finance manager in his department for forging the accounts. But the investigators aren't buying it. There are records showing Bryce himself authorized those wires. Vanessa shook her head. Typical narcissist. He'll never take accountability. One morning, Dean's phone buzzed with an unexpected call from an unknown number. When he answered, a clipped voice identified itself as a federal agent. They'd discovered his name in certain Road Force documents regarding intellectual property and patent disputes. The agent politely asked if Dean was willing to provide any statements about Bryce's handling of finances. Dean's pulse kicked up. He calmly replied that he had parted ways with Road Force before all the alleged embezzlement, but he could share any relevant history. The agent asked a few questions, verifying a timeline. In the end, it seemed they were building a case that spanned Bryce's entire tenure. When Dean hung up, he exhaled. He had no fear of being implicated. He had a paper trail showing how Bryce and Audrey forced him out. If anything, he was a victim. And he suspected the investigators recognized that. "This is it," Dean said to Nora. "Bryce's downfall is guaranteed. Even if he escapes full conviction, he'll never regain any business credibility." Nora nodded, relief in her eyes. It's about time. Meanwhile, Audrey tried to keep a low profile. Suspended from Road Force, she faced a barrage of negative press linking her to Bryce's fiasco. While not directly charged, her name appeared in various documents referencing her role in certain PR deals that sidestepped official procedures. She might not be criminally liable, but her professional reputation lay in tatters. The kids, Evan and Lily, remained mostly under the care of Aunt Paula. Dean visited them regularly. He saw less of Audrey, though occasionally she'd text to coordinate pickup times or check if the kids were with him. The tone was polite, almost apologetic, but never fully crossing that line into genuine warmth. Dean accepted it as the best they could manage now. In a quiet moment, Lily confided in Dean. Mom cries a lot at night. She's so sad. She thinks we hate her. The young girl's eyes brimmed with concern. Dean's heart squeezed. Sweetheart, you don't have to hate her. She made mistakes, but she's still your mom. Just support each other, okay? He felt torn, resentful of Audrey's past betrayal, yet not wanting the kids to despise their mother. Lily nodded, tears glistening, and Dean pulled her into a hug. He hoped Audrey could find a path forward that didn't involve further manipulations. He'd do what was right for the kids, but beyond that, Audrey was on her own. By contrast, Zentech Solutions soared behind the scenes. The first wave of new hires settled in, the pilot assembly warehouse buzzed with activity, and the investor funds materialized as promised. Nora carefully managed budgets, ensuring no wasteful spending. Vanessa oversaw the software integration across the new lines, refining every detail. Dean navigated strategic alliances, meeting with small specialty automakers who were willing to incorporate Zentech's battery modules into limited-run EV models. Their technology had progressed to a point where they could run a full battery pack test under near-commercial conditions. The results were even better than projected, nearly 25% more range than the standard EV benchmarks, with faster charging times. In the hush of the workshop, a sense of collective pride swelled. Each day, they were forging a legacy that would overshadow any success Roadforce once boasted. And the industry started noticing. Small automotive news outlets wrote speculative pieces. Could this newcomer Zentech overtake the old EV giants? Dean felt a cautious thrill. He told his team, "Let's not get cocky. We have a lot to prove. But if we keep delivering, we'll define the future of electric mobility." Eventually, Bryce's case advanced to a preliminary hearing. Rumors swirled that he'd attempt a plea deal or a grand defense. The day of the hearing arrived, and though Dean had no legal obligation to attend, he couldn't resist. Part of him wanted to see Bryce once so smug face real accountability. He slipped into the courthouse quietly, wearing a simple blazer and seating himself at the back of the public gallery. He didn't plan to get involved, just observe. The small courtroom buzzed with murmurs, reporters aiming for glimpses of the disgraced former CEO. A couple of Roadforce staff members sat near the front, expressions grim. When Bryce was led in by his attorney, Dean felt a surreal jolt. Bryce looked visibly thinner, dressed in a sharp suit that hung a bit loose, hair styled but lacking the usual confident sheen. He scanned the crowd with a haunted gaze, eyes flicking over Dean without immediate recognition. Then, after a moment, Bryce paused, recognition dawning. A flicker of anger twisted his features. Dean stared back impassively. This was the man who had conspired with Audrey to strip him of his company, who had brandished arrogance at every turn. Now he stood in front of a judge, indicted for corporate fraud, forced to plead, the final turn of the knife. The hearing was procedural. Bryce's attorney tried to frame the shell companies as legitimate consultation avenues, painting Bryce as misunderstood. The prosecutor countered with reams of evidence pointing to intentional misappropriation. The judge set a timetable for the next phases. No final decision was made that day, but it was clear Bryce faced a serious fight. As Bryce was led away, he shot Dean a venomous look, mouth curling in silent rage. Dean offered no reaction. He simply walked out of the courtroom, stepping into bright daylight, inhaling the crisp air with a feeling of liberation. He can glare all he wants, Dean thought. I owe him nothing. He destroyed himself. Outside, a cluster of reporters stood waiting for any quotes or tidbits. Dean tried to slip past, but one recognized him from old Roadforce photos. Mr. Pressfield, is that you? A female journalist called out, microphones thrust forward. Were you here to see Bryce Harrison's hearing? Dean hesitated, caught in the swirl. He'd avoided direct media statements about the scandal, but maybe it was time to speak on record briefly. He cleared his throat, pushing down the tension. Yes, I was just observing. A flurry of questions erupted. Did you know about the fraud when you left Roadforce? Was your departure tied to the shell companies? Is it true you're connected to a new EV startup that's overshadowing Roadforce? He raised a hand, quieting them. I left Roadforce because of disagreements in leadership and some personal betrayals. I had no knowledge of the extent of Bryce's financial misconduct until recently. As for the new startup, I'm proud to be part of a team developing advanced EV technology, but I won't comment further at this time. Another reporter pressed, "Are you the founder of Zentech Solutions?" "Rumor says you are." Dean gave a slight, cryptic smile. "I'm simply working on innovations that will benefit the EV industry. That's all I'll say. Thank you." He turned, walking away to a volley of more shouted queries. Adrenaline spiked. He'd never liked confrontation with the press, but he felt a measure of satisfaction. The public wanted answers, and ironically, Bryce's meltdown made them more curious about what Dean was doing. If they only knew the magnitude of Zentech's breakthroughs. When he reached his car, phone buzzing with texts likely from Nora, having seen the reporter's coverage, he exhaled. So be it. The final stage was coming. Let the world see how far he'd climbed since Bryce and Audrey cast him out. That evening, back at the workshop, Dean was double-checking some mechanical drawings with Vanessa when his phone buzzed. A text from Audrey. "I need to talk. Please, it's important." He stared at the screen, debating ignoring it. But she rarely used that tone. "One sec, Vanessa," he murmured, stepping away to call Audrey back. She answered almost immediately, voice shaky. "Dean, sorry to bother you. Bryce is out on bail and he's threatening to take me down with him if I don't help spin the PR. Her tone wavered on the edge of panic. "He said he'd claim I was part of the embezzlement. I can't go to jail." Dean felt an icy swirl. "So what do you want from me, Audrey? I don't control Bryce's actions." She sniffled. "I know, but I don't know who else to turn to. The board won't talk to me. Road Force is done with me. The only saving grace is I haven't been officially charged. I'm living off my sister's goodwill. And the kids, I can't drag them into more scandal. I just is there any way you can, I don't know. Protect me?" He exhaled, gripping the phone. Protect her? The memory of her standing in their bedroom with Bryce flashed through his mind. No, she'd forfeited that right. Yet the kids were entangled. For their sake, maybe there was something he could do that prevented Audrey from being indicted. "All I can suggest," he said finally, "is that you get your own lawyer. If you truly didn't sign off on any illegal transfers, the evidence should clear you. If you did sign suspicious documents, you'll have to show you were coerced. But I can't wave a magic wand for you." She let out a small sob. "That's it? I have no money to hire a decent lawyer. I can't get a job because my name's trashed." Dean swallowed hard. "Let's be real. We can't rewrite history. You didn't mind forging signatures or supporting Bryce's smear campaign against me. This is the price. I'll cover some portion of a basic lawyer's retainer for the kids' sake, so they're not stuck with a mother behind bars. But that's it." Audrey's breath caught. "You'd really do that?" He bit his tongue, feeling old anger flare. "Yes, but only so the kids aren't traumatized by losing both parents. Don't mistake it for forgiveness. I just refuse to let your poor decisions ruin Evan and Lily." A beat of silence. She whispered, "Thank you," and ended the call before he could respond. He stood there, phone still in hand, shoulders tense. Am I doing the right thing? He despised the thought of paying for her legal help, but if it kept the kids from losing their mother to prison, maybe it was worth it. With a heavy sigh, he returned to Vanessa, heart weighed down by the remnants of a marriage that refused to vanish cleanly. Despite personal entanglements, Zentech's schedule marched forward. Nora's meticulous planning had them on track for a small unveiling event in 2 months. They'd partnered with a boutique automaker called Ultimo Motors, known for custom EV conversions. Ultimo had agreed to integrate Zentech's battery pack and motor assembly into a sleek crossover vehicle, promising to reveal it at a technology showcase in a major city convention center. The synergy was perfect. Ultimo provided the chassis and design flair. Zentech supplied the heart of the EV, the advanced powertrain. The marketing materials teased a record-breaking range and revolutionary performance, fueling curiosity in automotive circles. Investors were thrilled, pumping more resources into the pilot assembly line. Carter, the mechanical engineer they'd hired, spearheaded the integration with the Ultimo chassis. Every day he tested, retested, refined. Nora ensured budgets didn't spiral. Vanessa hammered out final software calibrations, while Dean played the role of strategic conductor, ensuring all pieces moved in harmony. Amid these frantic preparations, Dean sometimes found himself pausing at a quiet moment like sipping coffee in the early morning at the workshop, or standing by the newly acquired assembly equipment just to reflect on how far he'd come. No more motel rooms, no more living in fear of a corporate coup. He was forging an empire on his own terms. The final blow to Bryce had landed, and the man's downfall was nearly locked in. Now it was time for the coda to this entire saga, a triumphant unveiling that would show the world exactly who Dean Pressfield was: an inventor, a visionary, a father, no longer a victim of betrayal. As the unveiling drew nearer, Dean realized that for the first time in a long while, he was living day to day with a sense of excitement rather than dread. Zentech's growing team felt like a family one built on mutual respect and shared passion, unlike the manipulative environment Bryce had fostered at Roadforce. Nora, with her calm efficiency and unwavering loyalty, became the backbone of the operation's finances. Vanessa had blossomed into a dynamic leader in software and engineering oversight. Carter and the new hires meshed well, each contributing their expertise. The workshop thrummed with creative energy. One afternoon, as Dean strolled through the pilot assembly warehouse, checking on the nearly complete Ultimo Zentech crossover prototype, he spotted Vanessa analyzing data on a tablet. She wore grease-stained coveralls, hair pinned back, eyes locked on performance metrics, her brow furrowed in concentration. When she noticed him, her face brightened. "Dean, the torque distribution readout is even better than we hoped. We might crack the 0-60 record for a production-ready crossover." He let out a low whistle. "That's incredible. Reminds me of the old days when I first discovered a major efficiency jump at Roadforce. But this is on another level." They paused by the vehicle's open hood. The battery pack gleamed with carefully arranged cells, cables neatly routed. Vanessa patted the side. "This baby's going to shock the market." She hesitated, meeting Dean's gaze with a hint of fondness. "I'm so proud of us." Dean felt a warm flutter. She'd been more than just a colleague, she'd become a confidant, a friend who saw him at his lowest and believed in his potential. In that moment, the hum of machinery and the faint smell of metal gave way to a quiet, charged hush. "You've been amazing," he admitted, voice low. "I couldn't have done this without you. Really." Vanessa's cheeks colored slightly. "You'd have found a way, but I'm glad to be part of it." Neither said more, but an unspoken connection lingered. Dean recognized a growing closeness with her that went beyond professional camaraderie. He wasn't sure if it was too soon, given the wreckage of his marriage, but he couldn't deny the sense of possibility flickering there. A week later, with the prototype nearly complete, Dean took a rare weekend off. He convinced Audrey through a curt text exchange to let Evan and Lily spend Saturday night at his new townhouse. He'd recently moved into a modest but comfortable place closer to the workshop, refusing to rely on corporate housing again. When he picked the kids up, their excitement was palpable. Lily chattered nonstop in the back seat about how she heard Zentech was, like, super famous now, while Evan fired pointed questions about torque and battery capacity. Dean laughed, enjoying their wide-eyed curiosity. He'd set up a spare bedroom just for them bunk beds for Lily, and a single bed for Evan, though Evan insisted he was too old for bunk beds anyway. They teased each other, rummaged through the living room, exclaimed over the big TV and the new gaming console Dean had installed. It was the kind of ordinary domestic scene he'd craved for so long. That evening, they cooked homemade pizza together. Lily insisted on making her own half with extra cheese, while Evan risked a spicy pepperoni side. Dean, wearing an apron with a silly slogan, guided them carefully through kneading dough and layering sauce. The small kitchen filled with laughter and the warmth of real family life. They ate at the dining table, a sense of normalcy enveloping them. Lily recounted a funny story about a friend's birthday party. Evan boasted about his top score in a new video game. Dean felt contentment glow in his chest. This was what he'd fought for, the right to be a father free from manipulation or interference. At bedtime, Lily shyly asked, "Dad, can you read us a story like you used to?" Dean smiled, heart twinging with nostalgia. "Sure thing, sweetheart." They settled on the couch, the bunk beds forgotten, while Dean read an old favorite about a heroic inventor traveling the seas in a fantastical submarine. Lily leaned against him. Evan pretended not to care but listened closely. When the final page turned, their eyes drooped with contented sleepiness. As he tucked them in, Dean felt tears threaten. He hadn't realized how deeply he'd missed these simple rituals. Bidding them good night, he whispered silent thanks that, despite Audrey's choices, the kids were still his, and no one could take that away anymore. After dropping the kids back at Paula's house Sunday evening, Dean returned to find a message from Vanessa. "We've got some final sensor data I need you to see. Also want to talk about something else, mind a late dinner?" His pulse did a tiny flip. He texted back, "Sure, I'm free. Let's meet at the workshop?" Vanessa suggested a small bistro instead. Eager to break from the usual setting, Dean agreed. He changed into a clean button-down and headed out, trying to quell the unexpected flutter of nerves in his stomach. He arrived at the bistro just before closing time. Inside, it was quiet, dimly lit with flickering candles on wooden tables. Vanessa was already there, wearing a casual but stylish outfit, her red hair brushing her shoulders. She offered a smile that made Dean's chest warm. They ordered light salads and wine. She showed him the sensor data on a tablet, explaining how they'd shaved a few more milliseconds off the motor response curve. Dean listened, impressed, but also keenly aware of a shift in their dynamic. This felt less like a business meeting and more like an intimate catch-up. Eventually, the conversation turned personal. Vanessa asked about the weekend with his kids. He shared little anecdotes, face lighting up with paternal pride. She listened intently, then touched his hand gently, giving it a soft squeeze. "You're such a good dad," she murmured, eyes sincere. "They're lucky to have you." He swallowed. "Thanks. Means a lot coming from you." He hesitated, searching her gaze. "Look, I've been meaning to say, I appreciate everything you've done. You believed in me when no one else would. You've become important." She smiled softly, cheeks coloring. "I feel the same. This entire journey brought us close. Sometimes I catch myself thinking about you outside of work, wondering what you're doing, if you're okay." Dean felt a surge of affection. Their hands rested together on the table, the candlelight reflecting in her eyes. "Me too," he admitted, voice husky. "You've been in my thoughts a lot." They both paused, hearts pounding in the quiet bistro, the hum of the fridge the only background noise. Finally, Vanessa let out a breathy laugh. "So we're on the same page?" Dean nodded slowly, a smile tugging at his lips. "I think so." He leaned in and she met him halfway. Their kiss was gentle but filled with pent-up emotion, weeks of working side by side, trusting each other in a way neither had trusted anyone else. It was a kiss that signaled a new chapter, one rooted in respect and shared passion, far from the lies and betrayals that once haunted Dean. When they pulled back, breath mingling, Vanessa's eyes shone. "I've wanted that for a while." Dean's grin widened. "Same here." A weight lifted from him. He realized that while revenge had driven him, life had offered something else in the wreckage. A second chance at happiness, a partner who genuinely believed in him. They finished their wine, talking quietly about the future, how to navigate a budding relationship while leading Zentech. It felt easy, natural. And for the first time since Audrey's betrayal, Dean felt free to love without fear. Over the following days, Miss Clark insisted on meeting Dean, Nora, and Vanessa at her law firm's office to finalize a few documents. First, they needed to sign official new investor agreements for the upcoming unveiling. Second, Miss Clark had gleaned that Dean might want to secure partial custody arrangements with the kids now that Audrey's financial stability was questionable. In a sleek, glass-walled conference room, Miss Clark presented the paperwork. She was a formidable presence, sharp eyes, hair in a tight bun, a crisp navy suit. "Zentech's investor deal is straightforward. You keep majority control, they fund the pilot line, and you can buy back shares if you surpass certain performance milestones. It's good, protective of your IP." Nora and Vanessa nodded, exchanging pleased looks. Miss Clark then turned to Dean. "Now about your children. Audrey's situation is precarious. You can easily file for primary custody, given her lack of stable income and living arrangements. Have you decided?" Dean exhaled. Yes, I want at least joint custody, if not primary. Audrey's not a monster, but the kids deserve a stable home with me. Miss Clark pursed her lips. Given the circumstances, you'll likely win that easily. Audrey might contest it, but if she's in a financial bind, she won't have the means to wage a long legal battle. If you want me to push for full custody, I can begin immediately. Dean hesitated, glancing at Nora and Vanessa. Audrey was still the kid's mother. He didn't want to rip them away unless absolutely necessary. Let's do joint with me as the primary guardian, ensuring she has supervised visitation if needed. I'll finalize with you soon. Miss Clark nodded briskly. Understood. That can be arranged. Just keep in mind the outcome might leave Audrey with very little. If she wants more time with the kids, she might have to abide by your conditions. He swallowed the residual guilt. This is what's best for the kids, he reminded himself. Okay, proceed. They signed a few preliminary forms. Nora and Vanessa both gave him supportive nods. Miss Clark escorted them out, congratulating them on Zentech's unstoppable rise. As they rode the elevator down, Dean felt an odd swirl of triumph and sorrow because his new life was taking shape. Sorrow because the mother of his children had shattered all trust, leaving him to pick up the pieces alone. But at least the kids would be safe, stable, with a father who truly cared. Shortly after Miss Clark filed the custody motion, Audrey texted Dean in a flurry of panic. "You're taking the kids from me? Don't do this, please! I can't lose them!" Dean replied calmly, summarizing the arrangement. Joint custody, but he'd be the primary guardian. She could see them regularly, but he controlled the schedules. He pointed out that she had minimal resources right now, and the kids needed a stable environment. Her response was bitter. "You're punishing me. This is revenge, isn't it?" He breathed out, frustration spiking. He typed back, "No, this is about giving Evan and Lily a secure life. Stop making it about you." She didn't reply after that. Perhaps she realized she had no leverage, or maybe she was just too distraught to argue further. In any case, the legal wheels turned, and Miss Clark assured Dean they had a strong case. If Audrey contested, a judge might order a hearing, but it was unlikely to change the outcome drastically. Nora tried to console him. "You're not the bad guy here. She forced this scenario, and it's your duty to protect the kids." He nodded, still feeling the sting. "I know. Doesn't make it less painful." With legal matters grinding in the background, Zentech continued to gear up for the official unveiling. The event date was set, a major tech expo in the city's convention center, just a month away. Ultimo Motors finalized the body design around Zentech's powertrain. The press teased a rumored revolutionary crossover that might blow away EV watchers. Dean found himself juggling a dizzying array of tasks: final testing runs, software refinements, investor updates, event marketing. Vanessa handled the engineering team, Nora ensured finances stayed on track, and Carter refined any last-minute mechanical issues. The entire team felt the crunch, working late nights fueled by takeout and fervent enthusiasm. One afternoon, to lighten the mood, Dean arranged a small barbecue behind the assembly warehouse. They grilled burgers and veggie alternatives for the more health-conscious employees, played music from a portable speaker, and took a break from the frantic push. The sense of camaraderie was strong. These people believed in the vision, believed in Dean's leadership. Standing by the grill, spatula in hand, Dean observed the staff laughing, bonding over their shared triumph. He recalled how lonely he felt at Road Force's board dinners, overshadowed by Bryce's manipulative grin. Now it was pure authenticity. He thought of the betrayal that once threatened to break him and marveled at the new life he'd built from those ashes. Vanessa sidled up, holding 2 cups of soda. She passed one to him, her eyes warm. "This is quite a team you've grown." Dean beamed, flipping a burger. "We grew it, and it's just the start. After the expo, we'll see more expansion." She clinked her cup to his. "To a future free from snakes like Bryce." Dean nodded. Amen to that. In the final weeks before the unveiling, a few ghosts of the past still lingered. Bryce's trial date loomed, though it could be months away. Rumor said he was exploring a plea deal to reduce prison time. Road Force's board, now under new leadership, tried to salvage the company's name. They pivoted to smaller projects, but the stock never fully recovered. Some speculated that Road Force might get bought out by a larger automaker eventually. Audrey's finances collapsed. Miss Clark updated Dean that Audrey accepted the custody arrangement to avoid a bigger legal fight. She'd maintain partial visitation rights. Another small concession. Dean would provide a short-term monthly allowance to ensure the kids' well-being when they visited her. Miss Clark made sure it was ironclad Audrey couldn't demand more. During one uneasy phone call, Audrey managed a quiet thank you to Dean. "For the kids," she said, voice subdued. "I appreciate you not cutting me off completely." He just murmured acknowledgement, eager to end the call. Nothing remained to say. On the bright side, Evan and Lily adapted well to splitting time between their aunt's place and Dean's new townhouse. Lily grew enamored with the pilot assembly warehouse, begging to see the top-secret EV. Dean teased her that soon she'd be allowed a test ride once the unveiling passed. "It'll be the coolest ride to school," she giggled, eyes bright. Evan pretended to shrug, but Dean caught the excitement in his son's eyes too. He silently vowed to ensure they had all the wonder and opportunity life could offer far from the shadows of betrayal. As the final day counted down to the big expo unveiling, Dean felt a surge of anticipation. All the heartbreak, the cunning revenge, the unstoppable drive this moment would crown it all. The Zentech brand was poised to shine, forging the future of EV technology. Bryce was a cautionary tale in corporate greed. Audrey had receded into the background, overshadowed by her own regrets. At last, after months of carefully orchestrated planning, the stage was set for Zentech's triumphant arrival on the world scene. The day dawned clear and bright for the Global Tech and Mobility Expo, held at a sprawling convention center in the heart of the city. Banners fluttered outside, announcing the various exhibitors, major automakers, battery suppliers, software companies. Among them, a new name gleamed: Zentech Solutions in partnership with Ultimo Motors. Dean Pressfield stood behind a curtained display area, heart thudding with excitement. He wore a sharp suit, hair neatly combed, feeling a mix of pride and nerves. Vanessa was next to him, wearing a stylish blazer, tablet in hand, checking final sensor readings. Nora hovered, ensuring the press materials were ready, the lighting perfect for the big moment. A handful of Zentech engineers and staff stood near the edges, eager yet subdued. They'd tested the Ultimo Zentech crossover thoroughly, but any live unveiling carried risks. Still, the atmosphere bristled with confidence. Outside, journalists and expo attendees milled about, waiting for the scheduled demonstration. The hush broke when an announcer tapped the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Zentech Solutions unveiling one of the most highly anticipated events of this expo. Prepare to witness a leap forward in electric mobility." Applause rippled. Dean exchanged a quick, meaningful glance with Vanessa. Then the curtain rose, revealing the sleek, gunmetal gray crossover SUV, custom-branded with Ultimo's exterior aesthetics, but sporting a discreet Zentech logo on the front fender. The crowd murmured in approval at the futuristic lines. Camera flashes popped. Nora stepped forward with a microphone, greeting the audience. "Thank you for joining us. I'm Nora Barrett, CFO of Zentech Solutions. Today, we present a collaboration between our advanced EV powertrain and Ultimo Motors' cutting-edge design. Let me introduce the brains behind our technology, Dean Pressfield and Vanessa Kent." Dean and Vanessa stepped forward to polite applause. Dean took the mic, voice steady despite the adrenaline surging in his veins. "Welcome. I've dreamed of this moment for years, an EV that not only matches consumer demands but breaks the mold on range, charging speed, and overall performance. Our powertrain achieves up to 400 miles on a single charge, with a 0 to 60 under 4 seconds for a mid-size crossover." Gasps rippled through the crowd. That range and acceleration combo was unprecedented for a mass-market-style SUV. Journalists leaned in, scribbling notes or snapping pictures. Some recognized Dean's name from the scandal at Road Force, but his calm, authoritative tone made them forget the past. Vanessa took over, explaining the technical highlights: battery density, motor torque vectoring, A-driven efficiency. The crowd buzzed with excitement, reporters capturing every word. Then came the dramatic flourish, a live test drive on a small indoor track the expo had set up. The crowd parted as the crossover glided into motion, near-silent except for the hum of its electric motor. It zipped around the track with startling agility, cameras whirring to capture the moment. When the car rolled to a stop, the applause was thunderous. Questions bombarded them about production timelines, cost, partnerships. Dean skillfully fielded them. Final details were in progress, but a limited run would begin soon, with broader licensing after success metrics. A sense of collective awe permeated the space. In the back, other automakers looked on warily, realizing a new competitor had arrived, one they couldn't easily dismiss. Dean couldn't help a faint smile at that. Let them watch. This is our time. This is... Unbeknownst to Dean, Lily and Evan had convinced Aunt Paula to bring them to the expo. Midway through the unveiling, Lily's excited squeal echoed from behind the crowd. "Dad! Dad!" He turned, spotting his children weaving through onlookers. A flush of warmth spread through him. He beckoned them over. The audience parted slightly as the kids dashed up, eyes shining with pride. "You made it!" Dean exclaimed, ruffling Lily's hair. Evan gave him a quick grin. They stood near the stage, gazing at the crossover with unabashed admiration. Photographers snapped pictures of the sweet family moment. Vanessa approached with a grin, greeting the kids. Lily bubbled, "We saw the test drive. That was so cool. Everyone was cheering." Evan nodded, trying to maintain a teen's aloof composure, but failing to hide his awe. "It's insane how fast it went." Dean chuckled. "It's real, guys. This is what Dad's been working on." Aunt Paula lingered at the edge, giving Dean a thumbs-up. He silently thanked her for orchestrating the kids' visit. This day felt complete with them here, affirming everything he'd fought for. Amid the crowd, Dean suddenly spotted a familiar figure near the expo entrance. Audrey. She stood still, gazing toward the Zentech display, face etched with a mix of wonder and regret. Their eyes met across the sea of people. She gave a small nod, seemingly acknowledging his triumph. Dean felt a swell of conflicting emotions. He didn't beckon her over, nor did he scowl. He simply returned a curt nod. She looked away, hugging her purse. Perhaps she came to support Lily and Evan, or maybe out of curiosity to see Zentech's success. In any case, she didn't attempt to push forward or steal attention. For once, she seemed content to remain on the sidelines. Nora whispered at Dean's side, "Audrey's here." "I see," Dean murmured. "It's fine. She can watch. This success is bigger than whatever leftover drama remains." Nora squeezed his arm, acknowledging the final closure that this moment provided. Audrey had to witness firsthand the unstoppable force Dean had become beyond her betrayals, beyond Bryce's sabotage. Following the demonstration, Dean joined a panel for a brief Q&A. Cameras flashed, microphones lined up. One journalist asked the question half the crowd wondered. "Mr. Pressfield, your name is famously tied to the road force fiasco with Bryce Harrison. Now you appear as a major figure at Zentech. Care to comment on how you overcame that scandal?" Dean inhaled, choosing his words carefully. "I left Road Force due to irreconcilable leadership differences. Sometimes life throws you adversity, but if you have a dream and a great team, you can rebuild stronger. Zentech stands for innovation unhampered by ego or greed. We prioritize real engineering excellence. That's how we overcame those obstacles." A wave of appreciative murmurs rippled. Another reporter asked if he had any message for the former Road Force executives who undermined him. Dean gave a measured smile. "My only message is that the future belongs to those who work with integrity and genuine passion. I hold no grudges. Zentech's achievements speak for themselves." Nora and Vanessa exchanged a proud glance at that gracious stance. Dean felt a burden lift. He truly didn't need to rub it in. The world saw the results. Bryce's downfall was old news. Zentech's rise was the fresh headline. That was enough. As the quanda wrapped, applause broke out. The unveiling was a smashing success. Potential buyers and investors flooded the booth, eager for more details. Lily and Evan hopped with excitement, soaking up the limelight of their dad's star moment. That evening, the Zentech core team gathered in a private suite at the Expo's partnering hotel. It wasn't a lavish affair, just good food, drinks, and relaxed conversation among the people who'd poured their souls into the project. Crisp city lights shimmered outside the windows, reflecting a sense of possibility. Dean clinked a glass of sparkling juice with Nora, Vanessa, Carter, and a few key engineers. "To all of you," he said, voice thick with gratitude, "for believing in this mission, for pushing through countless late nights. We did it." They raised their glasses in unison. "We did!" Laughter and cheers filled the suite. After the toast, Dean found a moment to step out onto the balcony for fresh air. The city sprawled below a tapestry of glowing windows and neon signs. In the distance, he could see the expo center's lit facade. He recalled how he once cowered in a motel, stripped of everything. Now he stood on the brink of reshaping an industry. Vanessa slid beside him, fingers lacing with his. "Hey, enjoying the view?" He turned, affection warming his chest. "I am, and I'm also enjoying you." She smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Think we'll ever slow down?" "Someday," he said softly. "But not yet. We have more expansions, more breakthroughs ahead." She squeezed his hand. "I'm with you. Whatever comes next." He kissed the top of her head. They lingered there, content in the knowledge that their journey, born from heartbreak, had brought them to this powerful new beginning. Within a month of the unveiling, legal forms confirmed Dean's primary custody of Evan and Lily. Audrey, battered by the scandal and lacking funds, didn't contest. She agreed to the visitation schedule and the modest monthly allowance Dean provided. The kids adjusted, splitting weekends with their mother, but spending the majority of school nights at Dean's townhouse. Audrey found a small apartment, living on the allowance plus occasional freelance PR gigs. The tension between her and Dean remained, but it was a distant hum, overshadowed by the day-to-day joys of fatherhood. He made sure Lily and Evan never felt pressured to choose sides. They were free to love both parents. Bryce's trial proceeded, overshadowed by the unstoppable hype of Zentech. The last Dean heard, Bryce was negotiating a plea to avoid a lengthy sentence, possibly serving a few years behind bars. So ended the story of the once glorified CFO who thought he could outrun his own greed. Roadforce survived in a diminished form, eventually acquired by a larger EV conglomerate. Their brand vanished, folded into the parent company, a cautionary tale, overshadowed by Zentech's fresh success. 8 months after the unveiling, Dean found himself in a stable routine he hadn't known was possible. Joint custody with Audrey worked smoothly enough. Zentech thrived, rolling out the first run of the Altimo crossover, hailed by automotive reviewers as a game-changer. Investors clamored for more. The pilot warehouse buzzed with expansions. On a mild spring evening after dinner with the kids, Dean asked Vanessa to join them for a little walk around the neighborhood. She'd grown close to Evan and Lily, helping Lily with science projects, bonding with Evan over coding. The kids adored her, seeing how her playful yet driven nature complemented Dean's calm presence. They meandered down a tree-lined street, Lily skipping ahead, Evan flicking through a phone app that tracked daily steps. Vanessa and Dean strolled side by side, occasionally exchanging affectionate smiles. In the golden glow of street lamps, the future felt limitless. When they circled back to Dean's townhouse, the kids rushed inside to watch a new show. Vanessa lingered with Dean on the doorstep. He took her hand, heart thrumming. "There's something I want to show you," he murmured. He led her to the small backyard, where he'd set up a discreet canopy of fairy lights. A table stood with a simple bouquet of wildflowers. Vanessa gasped softly, eyes flicking around the enchanting little scene. "Dean, this is beautiful." He turned to her, a bit nervous, but the emotion in his chest buoyed him. "You've been my rock, my partner in building Zentech, and more. I never imagined I could trust someone again after everything that happened, but I trust you fully. I want you to be part of my life, truly, not just as my colleague or friend, but—" He pulled a small ring box from his pocket, breath catching. Vanessa's eyes widened, tears brimming instantly. "Vanessa," he continued, voice trembling, "will you marry me? Merge our lives like we merged our ideas. Build something that lasts beyond all the heartbreak we left behind." Her laughter mixed with a sob. "Yes, oh my God, yes!" She threw her arms around him, and he slipped the ring onto her finger, heart soaring with a joy so profound it nearly brought him to his knees. They kissed under the soft glow of fairy lights. the night sky a silent witness to two souls who found each other amid betrayal and found hope in shared dreams. In the months that followed, the wedding was a small, intimate affair, attended by the Zentech team, Nora, Harold, who was thrilled to see Dean finally at peace, and a handful of close friends. Evan and Lily served as ring-bearer and flower girl, beaming with happiness. Audrey didn't attend, though she sent a polite note of congratulations and an apology for her past. Dean acknowledged it with a nod, letting the final bitterness slip away. Under a brilliant summer sun, Dean and Vanessa exchanged vows in a garden ceremony, each vow laced with references to forging the future, trusting in synergy, and supporting each other's ambitions. The cheers that erupted felt like a testament to love birthed from adversity. The kids ran around excitedly during the reception, and the newlyweds danced beneath a canopy of laughter and well-wishes. In the days after, life continued. Zentech expanded to a second model with Ultimo, press raved about their next-gen battery breakthroughs, and the family of four, plus a potential next generation if Dean and Vanessa chose, thrived. Each day, Dean woke with gratitude that he'd escaped the shadows of Bryce's betrayal and Audrey's faithlessness to emerge stronger, with a real partner by his side. One afternoon, as Dean guided Lily and Evan through a tour of the expanded assembly line, he paused to watch them marvel at the robotic arms assembling battery packs. He caught Vanessa's eye across the factory floor. She gave him a bright grin, mind half in a new software design. He realized how complete life felt. Here, in the heart of innovation, with the hum of progress around them, he'd seized control of his destiny. The betrayal and revenge storyline had reached its natural end, replaced by a stable, meaningful legacy. Zentech wasn't just a triumph over Bryce and Audrey, it was a triumph for every dream Dean once thought was lost. "Dad, can we see the next car model? The sports version?" Lily asked, tugging his sleeve. Dean laughed, ruffling her hair. "Sure thing, sweetheart. You're gonna love it." They strode ahead, the future wide open, the heartbreak of the past left behind. Every day was a testament to the truth that from ruin could come rebirth, from betrayal could come unstoppable drive, and from heartbreak could come a new, unwavering love. Hey, listeners of Temptress Cheating Tales,